Greetings, you over 1 million practitioners of common sense and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Many of you have asked, is Hollywood too big to fail? And others have asked, is Hollywood too big to succeed? And the answer to both of those questions is yes. For over a century, to varying degrees, Tinseltown was always the cradle of innovation and imagination. Now, it was not without its scandals and long, dark, and down periods, but it was always able to reinvent itself. Until recently. Despite rising ticket prices and some obvious successes, the Hollywood domestic box office hasn't even come close to the totals of 2019, which was over half a decade ago. It's become undeniable that this American institution is in entropy, and it was all self-inflicted. The mantra in 2023 and 2024, aside from the one of male and pale is stale, was survive until 25, and now it's turned into survive 25. A year filled with unnecessary remakes, reimaginations, prequels, and sequels, only to be followed by another year of unnecessary reimaginings, remakes, prequels, and sequels. It's a tale as old as time, an empire succumbing to ego, hubris, detachment, divisiveness, corporatism, hyperactivism, and the worst mistake of all, f***ing with the money, which is you. So as movie theaters in Hollywood look at the long dark of the soul, I think it's a good time to look back and see how we all got here. Welcome to the Nerdrotic Supercut, the decline and fall of woke Hollywood.
Nerdrotic.com.
I'm that petrifying to these billion-dollar companies? Well, good. I hope I am. And I hope everybody else becomes that. I mean, this is what they're afraid of. They're afraid of one voice. Imagine.
We all have joined a circus here. And in that circus, there is going to be all sorts of inappropriate messages, inappropriate behavior, and sometimes downright sexual predatory aspects of it.
My dog stepped on a bee.
Lord! Jada, I love you. G.I. Jane 2, can't wait to see it. All right? That was a nice one. Okay. I'm out here. Uh-oh, Richard.
I'm being arrested for disorderly conduct?
Yeah.
I'm transgender and non-binary and I don't want to be searched by a man. I claim my Fourth Amendment rights.
I find myself in New Zealand playing the first female dwarf and immersing myself in the world of Middle-earth in such an extraordinary way.
You have all these actors who have become famous playing these
parts,
characters,
yeah.
But they're not movie stars.
Right.
Captain America is the star.
Right.
Thor is the star.
If the only gatekeepers to movie stardom came from Tarantino and Scorsese, I would never have had the opportunity to lead a $400 million plus movie. I'm in awe of their filmmaking genius. They are transcendent auteurs, but they don't get to point their nose at me or anyone.
The evolution of the business has gone to, like, there are no movie stars anymore. Like, Anthony Mackie isn't a movie star. The Falcon is a movie star.
If you do win an award tonight, don't use it as a platform to make a political speech, right? You're in no position to lecture the public about anything. You know nothing about the real world. Most of you spent less time in school than Greta Thunberg. So, if you win, right, come up, accept your little award, thank your agent and your God, and f*** off, okay?
Remember all those Access Media articles telling you the thing that you clearly didn't like was a good thing? For instance, The Last Jedi has no respect for nostalgia, and that's a good thing. Disney killed the Star Wars expanded universe. Why, that's a good thing. The Eternals is not your typical Marvel movie, and that's a good thing. Andor doesn't feel like Star Wars, and that's a good thing. And who can forget my personal favorite, The Rings of Power is gonna upset Tolkien purists, and that's a good thing. Well, I've got one for you. Woke Hollywood is failing, and that's a good thing. But how can you say that? The corporate shills have said woke Hollywood is doing just fine, and you're just a teeny tiny vocal minority of bigots. Well, let's recap the year, and you'll have to forgive me, I'm doing this off the top of my head. Award shows completely bombing, including the Oscars, which was only saved from being another record low by the slap heard around the world. Disney Star Wars accomplishing the inexplicable by breaking Disney Star Wars again with Obi-Wan. The beginnings of a woke Netflix culling following the failed Chappelle protests.
We understand that jokes are jokes, things are things, but at the end of the day,
What the hell is even that?
A year of Disney Marvel diminishing returns in the theater and absolute MCU failures on Disney Plus. Couple that with all of those Disney flops, including one from Pixar.
Sexism in gaming.
The inevitable demise of G4 in under a year. Batgirl, a near completed film, canceled and erased from existence. Zaslav with his axe, firing all the big shots at formerly America's dumbest company, Warner Brothers, and then hiring James Gunn and bringing back Henry Cavill. The wokest of the woke, CW, selling for a bag of potato chips. Unfortunately, the company who bought them overpaid after they found out for every dollar the CW was spending, it was losing $2.
Everything burns.
Then, of course, there's The Woman King, a historical drama and a female empowerment story about slavers somehow managing to have a good opening on the worst box office weekend in 25 years.
If you don't come see it, then you're sending a message that black women cannot lead the box office globally. That you are supporting that narrative.
Bros, an LGBTQ plus rom-com, completely flopped after the star of the film called potential movie ticket buyers homophobes. Shocking turn of events. In another shocking turn of events, just recently the film She Said, which is a docudrama based on the investigation behind the Harvey Weinstein scandal, completely failed. Honorable mentions: Star Trek and Doctor Who, two franchises that are well into the apathy phase, trying to turn things around. Too little, too late. And one of the more surprising things of the year, no, not the Rings of Power being a complete disaster, the successful fan backlash that absolutely, positively defeated a $1 trillion company. And the most recent thing, Disney firing their CEO in the middle of the night on a Sunday.
The strategies that Bob's put in place are really, long lasting in terms of where the company's going to go in the short term.
Bob Iger has said already he is not coming back. So if you take him at his word, he is gone.
You don't want another big media job.
No, I worked for a big media company for almost 50 years.
Yeah.
I started when I was 23.
Yeah.
No.
The company says with its parks and other operations shut down, it lost more than $1 billion last quarter alone.
Today, dozens of Disney employees walked off the job, an act of protest over Florida's so-called Don't Say Gay bill.
Now, we were opposed to the bill from the outset, but we chose not to take a public position on it because we thought we could be more effective working behind the scenes.
Don't say he, she, ladies, gentlemen, just very basically we have to be in fear of what we say now.
I want you to know that your words have made a real impact on me. I understand that we've made mistakes and the pain that those mistakes have caused. And I know that our silence wasn't just about the bill in Florida, but about every time an individual or institution that should have stood up for this community did not.
Yeah.
Beta!
We're incredibly proud of how much our stories have been embraced by people around the world.
The cost of keeping these subscribers, of coming up with blockbuster hits, of paying billions of dollars in programming costs to keep the fresh material coming that's going to attract people and keep them from turning this stuff off is enormous.
Well, we had a great quarter overall. I mean, not only in streaming, but in our parks business as well.
Healthy companies do not fire their CEO in the middle of the night at an Elton John concert and then replace him in a panic move with the architect of all their failures. As a wise person once said on Twitter, it's the roundest of times and find outest of times. Get woke, go broke. Or in the case of Twitter and Warner Brothers, get woke, get taken over. And lest we not forget Elon Musk's hostile takeover of Twitter, and the meltdown has been glorious, particularly from woke Hollywood.
So it has been a little over a week since Elon Musk took over Twitter, and the place is it's a mess.
I've been on Tesla, man.
Right. Yeah, me too.
It happened. Michelle Obama wouldn't have happened.
And Elon Musk Twitter? I don't know,
Musk
right? This used to be a town square.
He's already called back some of the workforce he fired a few days ago. He's putting his $8 charge for blue check verification on hold. First it was going to be $20, now it's going to be $8. He also suspended Kathy Griffin for impersonating him on a parody account. I'm getting off.
Okay, fuckity bye.
And none of this happens if you walk away, black pill, or stay silent. And things have gotten so bad, Hollywood, the access media, and the mainstream media have to acknowledge it, but of course, in their own way, without getting to the source of the problem and completely missing the point. Ideological blind spot or willful ignorance. Maybe they're the same thing. I'll let you decide. Now we're going to get to an article that Chris Gore sent me about a month ago from the Gray Lady, the once respected but now ultimate garbage tier New York Times. After hashtag MeToo reckoning of fear Hollywood is regressing, the movement led to increased diversity, representation in the entertainment industry, but now there is a worry that executives may have turned their attention elsewhere. You mean focus on things like being profitable as a company? Harvey Weinstein's second sex crimes trial began Monday in Los Angeles. She said about the journalistic investigation that took him down and helped ignite the hashtag MeToo movement, which ultimately failed, arrives in theaters on November 18th. Well, that already happened and it completely failed. The Woman King opened to strong ticket sales last month on the worst box office weekend in 25 years, so I'm not sure how that happens, with Viola Davis saying she thought about the man who did very bad things to her, by the way, to power her visceral performance as the leader of the all-female group of African warriors that enslaved their own people. The convergence is a reminder of just how earth-shaking hashtag MeToo was for Hollywood. It was also opportunistic and a massive power grab, and that's why it ultimately failed. It helped touch off a broader reckoning in the entertainment industry around diversity, equity, and inclusion on both sides of the camera. Who gets to make the movies? Who gets to be subject of them? Activists say the studio and sets were permanently changed for the better. Mind you, activists said that. Zero tolerance for the workplace sexual bad things and discrimination is real. In recent months, however, Hollywood business culture has started to regress in subtle ways. Oh, it wasn't so subtle because Hollywood never stopped the discrimination, they just changed it.
You can imagine, as a lot of industries, but Hollywood particularly, for so long, people hired people they knew, and that ended up often being people who looked like them.
We must, in my view, always have the right to promote the best man for the job, regardless of sex.
New problems, widespread cost cutting as the box office continues to struggle, coming union contract negotiations that producers worry will result in a filming shutdown have become a higher priority. You mean making money, being profitable?
Check out the big brain on Brad. You're a smart mother, that's right.
Fearing blowback, media companies that were vocal about hashtag MeToo and Black Lives Matter have been quieter on more recent political debates or cultural issues. It is my belief that some of the most useless people on the planet are DEI executives. So let's hear from some. Diversity, equity, and inclusion executives say that they are exhausted by an all-boy network that is continuously trying to reconstitute itself. Women who were hired for big jobs and held up as triumphant examples of a new era have been pushed aside, except for Jennifer Salke at Amazon and Kathleen Kennedy, both who should be, while some of the men who were sidelined by misconduct accusations are working again, probably because in some cases those were just unproven accusations. Are there pieces of crap in Hollywood? Certainly. Here's the problem: trying to actually figure out who they are in a town filled with them. If asked to speak on the record about their continued dedication to change, Hollywood executives refuse or scramble in terror toward the "we remain staunchly committed" talking points written by publicists. Everything they say is practically written by publicists. But what they say privately is a different story. Some revert to sexist and racist language. Certainly, much of the fervor is gone. You know what happened? I'll give you 3 names. Asia Argento, Amber Heard, and Mrs. Jar Jar Abrams. Katie McGrath resigning from the MeToo Time's Up board of directors that I believe was ultimately used as a massive power grab.
How do you guys make hiring decisions, and who wins?
Katie wins. No, I think that if I could just say this, because this is,
This article is based on interviews with more than 24 industry leaders, including top studio executives, agents, activists, marketers, and producers, who spoke on the condition of anonymity to candidly discuss the current state of the entertainment business. They varied in age, race, ethnicity, and gender. For 3 years, we hired nothing but women and people of color, said a senior film executive who, like many leaders in the industry, is a white male. He added that he did not think some of them were able to do the jobs they got. Whoa, you're telling me you're filling quotas in a highly specialized luxury creative industry and they aren't able to do the work? They're inexperienced? I'm shocked. In hushed conversations over lunch at Toscano Brentwood or cocktails at the San Vincent bungalows, some powerful producers and agents have started to question the commercial viability of inclusion-minded films and shows. I wonder what brought them to that conclusion. Maybe they talked to the CW executives. You know, we tried all that woke shit, but every time we made $1, we had to spend $2. I think we're losing money. They point to terrible ticket sales for films like Bros, the first gay rom-com from a major studio, and Easter Sunday, a comedy positioned as a watershed moment for Filipino representation. Never heard of it, sorry. Miss Marvel, a critically adored D+ series about a teenage Muslim superhero, was lightly viewed or not viewed at all, according to Nielsen's measurements. This brings us to the understatement of the year. There was an overcorrection, one studio head said. At another major studio, a top production executive pointed to the implosion of Time's Up, the anti-harassment organization founded by influential Hollywood women, including Katie McGrath, Miss Jar Jar Abrams, as a turning point. For a while, we all lived in complete fear, he said. That fear remains, but it has lessened. There is more room for gray and more benefit of the doubt and a bit of cringing about the rush to judgment that went on at the height of #MeToo. And New York Times is presenting this as a bad thing. No, it is a good thing. Amazing progress has been made and it's not going away, and it should not be discounted or overlooked, says Amy Baer, a producer, a former studio executive, and a board president at Women in Film, an advocacy organization. But there is fatigue. It is hard to maintain momentum, especially when there's so many opportunists ruining your movement. Within America, the land of opportunity, there is Hollywood, the land of opportunism. Entertainment companies are not backing off their tough sexual bad things policies that they have introduced in recent years. This is probably a good thing considering Hollywood, in part because board members are worried they will face shareholder lawsuits and maybe lawsuits from some other places. The Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences recently recommitted to its diversification campaign despite years of aggressive efforts to invite women and people of color to become members. The Academy is currently 66% male and 81% white. Well, hopefully you get there someday and do it before people stop watching the show, which could happen any day now. The moment is nonetheless unnerving, says Sarah Ann Massey, an actress who appears in She Said, which recently was the biggest flop of the year. Well, maybe until Strange Worlds came out. I'm not naive enough to think that a system that is unequal and oftentimes oppressive, pretending in Hollywood, by the way, that's what we're talking about. Yes, still, very much so, is going to change overnight, Miss Moss said. At the same time, I find it incredibly frustrating. People at the top of the food chain in particular seem to have gotten distracted by new concerns, like making money and having to deal with all the bullshit accusations of Me Too time's up, and then having to deal with activists usurping what was probably a legitimate movement, and now it's turned into full-blown DEI takeover. In August, Warner Brothers shelved Batgirl, a nearly finished movie starring a Latina actress featuring a transgender actor in a supporting role, written by a woman, produced by a woman, and directed by two Muslim men. Warner Brothers Discovery never publicly explained its decision, but signaled that it found Batgirl to be creatively lacking. Dan Lin, a producer whose credits include Aladdin and the Lego Movie, was among those who inferred something else. And he also openly admits something we've all known for a long time. It's no longer about optics, he said. A recession is coming. Budgets are tightening, and I'm really worried that diversity is going to be the first thing that goes. Not a surprise when you're greenlighting projects, casting actors, and casting directors and producers behind the scenes, all for optics. Studios have started to take more risks with content. Are you sure about that? Backing scripts, for instance, that would have been radioactive in 2018. What do you mean, Top Gun Maverick, Spider-Man No Way Home? At the height of the hashtag MeToo, or in 2020, when BLM was at the forefront of the culture in the summer of love that Hollywood went hard in the paint for, and people haven't forgotten.
I have to be honest, if things had gone differently this past week in Minneapolis, I might have traded in my heels for marching boots. I know that a lot of you people at home want to reach for your remote when you feel like Hollywood is preaching to you.
No shit. At the same time, some movies and shows that overtly showcase diversity and inclusion have either struggled in the marketplace or failed to get off the runway. The takeaway, at least for some agents and studio executives, the smart ones, we tried. These woke projects don't work. And the reason it doesn't work isn't because of diversity and inclusion, au contraire, it's the message that lacks either. And all of this was inevitable. To the stands and corporate shills who have been telling us Disney and Hollywood are doing just fine, to all the others who have been saying your voice doesn't matter and it's all a waste of time. Just a reminder, Disney lost $1.5 billion on its streaming in one quarter, and now Bob Chapek is being accused of cooking the books again. And one more time, because this is never going to get old, Disney fired their CEO in the middle of the night on a Sunday, and I know they replaced him with the same idiot who got us here, but it was the action itself. To state the obvious, because that's what I have to do here on YouTube, these are not the actions of a healthy organization. Is Hollywood going to change? Time will tell. It certainly looks like a couple of organizations are at least trying, but others still need to hit bottom, but they're well on their way. Maybe Hollywood shouldn't have prioritized identity politics over profit. Maybe they shouldn't have told half of their audience to f off. Maybe they should have actually competed instead of colluded, which is a bad thing. That's why woke Hollywood failing is a good thing.
Hi everyone. Well, summer is almost here, and Top Gun Maverick is going to kick it off. Our extraordinary cast and crew gave it their all to bring you the most immersive, authentic, and entertaining cinematic experience on the biggest screens exclusively and only in the theaters. So I hope you enjoy. We've made it for you.
Respect the and tame the
Tom Cruise smash hit just passed another milestone, crossing the $600 million mark after just 2 weeks.
Wow.
That's incredible.
This is actually, after 2 years, my first theater experience, and this is wonderful.
It's a good lesson for Hollywood. It's like if you give the audience what they want, they will come.
A wise man on Twitter once said, it's the aroundest of times and the find outest of times, and that is certainly the case for woke Hollywood. And there are signs that the entire ecosystem of the entertainment industry is an absolute collapse. I mean, aside from the economic downturn, losing billions on streaming, the looming Writers Guild strike, no, the two things that are going to bother woke Hollywood the most are the death of the movie star and the decline of their top award show, the Oscars.
Please watch our movie.
Damn! You remember the Oscars, at least the Oscars of old. We used to actually look forward to them. Occasionally, they'd be entertaining. We'd root for films. Hell, we'd have Oscar pools at work. It was the gay Super Bowl, and it used to have ratings that rivaled the Super Bowl, but not so much anymore. Back in the day, it used to be a celebration of the art of film and Hollywood, and no, they didn't get everything right. Who could forget Annie Hall winning over Star Wars, or Chariots of Fire winning over Raiders of the Lost Ark, Dark Knight getting snubbed, just to name a few. And who could forget what I think is the worst decision of them all, E.T. winning over Douglas Trumbull's Blade Runner for special effects, a travesty. But occasionally they get things right, like Lord of the Rings Return of the King winning Best Picture, although all three Lord of the Rings films should have won Best Picture. Amen! And yes, occasionally we get something like Marlon Brando giving up his Oscar for The Godfather so a fake Native American can give a speech.
We very regretfully cannot accept this very generous award. And the reasons for this being are the treatment of American Indians today by the film industry.
And who could forget Sally Field's speech?
I haven't had an orthodox career, and I've wanted more than anything to have your respect. The first time I didn't feel it, but this time I feel it, and I can't deny the fact that you like me. Right now, you like me.
What the f***? I would be remiss not to mention Harvey Weinstein, who many have said correctly that he ruined the Oscars in more ways than one, but please remember that this is the same Hollywood who knew exactly what Harvey Weinstein was doing and were completely fine with it until they weren't.
Thank you, Harvey Weinstein, especially Harvey. Harvey and Bob Weinstein.
Harvey Weinstein. And God, Harvey Weinstein.
Congratulations, you five ladies no longer have to pretend to be attracted to Harvey Weinstein.
I think I'm taking the hit for an entire group of people who worked with Harvey Weinstein. It really does feel like something seismic is happening in the way we look at the balance of power, the way women are excluded from most of the areas at the decision-making level.
Which opened the door to the Me Too Time's Up era, which punished the guilty and the innocent and created a power vacuum.
It's thrilling to see what these conversations have become and the policies change so quickly in the wake of these movements.
Which brought in the new gatekeepers that not so slowly but surely brought us to the woke Hollywood of today.
I think the most important thing is inclusivity and more women. I mean, basically just more women anywhere, anytime, all at once.
Come again?
And instead of having a bunch of vapid, self-absorbed narcissists wearing $15,000 jewelry and $125,000 dresses, at least knowing how to have fun, now we're stuck with a bunch of vapid, self-absorbed narcissists wearing $15,000 jewelry and $125,000 dresses telling us how to live. God, I missed coked out Hollywood. That's right, your average garden variety celebrity now, who most people really can't recognize, but somehow they still get work, is more than just that. They are influencers, using their platform for change from the comfort of their private jets, limos, and $16 million mansions. In 2022, Hollywood lost 40% of their ticket buying audience. They're called the paying customer around these parts, and the ones that were left through a handful of successful films like Spider-Man No Way Home, Top Gun Maverick, Avatar 2, and now Super Mario Bros. Has told Hollywood exactly what they want, and through a boatload of flops has told the powers that be in Tinseltown exactly what they don't want. A message that's gonna be completely ignored because guess what, folks? Hollywood's got some brand new rules that go into effect this year, and they're completely insane. So please join me, you over 734,000 practitioners of common sense and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet. Let's hear why woke Hollywood is failing in their own words. From Deadline, don't doubt it, the Film Academy and its inclusion allies mean to change the business. The 96 Oscar cycle is upon us, and with it, something new. The mandatory representation and inclusion standards that require filmmakers and or their storylines and or their distributors to meet elaborate racial, sexual, and disability guidelines. Don't kid yourself with that everybody qualifies anyway notion that's been floating around since the standards were announced a couple of years ago. The rules are intended to change the film business for the greater good. If you don't think so, take a few minutes, it's going to take a lot longer than that, to browse the long list of compliance resources that are now posted on the Academy of Motion Picture Arts and Sciences website. To be fair, most of the corporations on planet Earth and, well, all the schools here in America have implemented a lot of these rules, and you might find some of them familiar. One corporation outside of Hollywood, Anheuser-Busch, has implemented some of these rules recently, and one company inside of Hollywood, Disney, has done it as well, and it's not working out well for either. But don't worry, that's not going to stop the Oscars. They're saying, hold my Bud Light.
What is this?
What is this?
Smells like this.
Smells like ew.
At present, the Academy's list of standards resources includes 20 entities with the promise of more to come. Some are nonprofits, keep that in mind. Others are commercial firms. The list says the website has been curated and reviewed by the Academy, and each resource provides robust, relevant, and actionable tools to support a filmmaker, production studio, or distributor in meeting these standards and facilitating progress. Believe me, folks, that is only the beginning of the corporate activist gobbledygook we're going to get in this article. And an impressive list it is, offering an approach to hiring and development that would be unfamiliar to a producer of the 1990s when films were good and built around flashes of inspiration, seat-of-the-pants decisions, trips to the favor bank, backdoor deals, and sometimes artfully loaded test audiences. I have very little doubt all of that is still going on, especially backdoor deals, am I right? Meet the new gatekeepers, same as the old gatekeepers. By the Academy's lights, a script hunt now starts not with a power agent lunch, but rather with a visit to the Blacklist, a globally unique database that efficiently identifies and celebrates great writing for everyone who needs it most. Again, with the writer's strike looming, that Blacklist might just have various writing AIs on it, and that would quite frankly improve things. Or, more to the point, to the parallel British Blacklist for information about the existing work of UK-based Black storytellers. So their blacklist is literally a blacklist. I have a question. In this blacklist that's made in the name of inclusivity that basically excludes everyone else except for one racial demographic, does it include all of that racial demographic or just the politically approved? My guess is the latter. Let's continue. With your standards compliant screenplay in hand, the Academy list helpfully explains which standard or standards each business or organization will help you to meet. You can start assembling your inclusion-friendly film. With apologies, dear viewer, hang in there because it gets so much worse. If you need interns, the Academy itself can supply them through its diversity-oriented Academy Gold program, and that will go a long way toward getting you past Standard C, which requires you to provide skill development for underrepresented groups. Remember that one. That, or you can try the Group Effort Initiative, which notes the Academy site can help you meet the same standard with people of color, LGBTQ+, people with disabilities, former foster and homeless youth, and people who have been previously incarcerated. Wait a minute. For those of you who are unaware, many years ago, I was previously incarcerated. Does that make me part of a marginalized group? Oh man. As for the rest of the staff, no problem. You can meet standards B and D, which require a diverse creative and marketing/distribution team, by visiting the Array Crew database, created by filmmaker and Academy board member Ava DuVernay. The very same Ava DuVernay who directed the box office disaster A Wrinkle in Time, and then Warner Brothers gave her Jack Kirby's The New Gods, which was canceled. And she also said this: director Ava DuVernay warns white men seeking Hollywood jobs, bias goes both ways. Array is led by an all-women executive team. What is a woman? Says the Oscars website. You know, nothing says inclusivity like excluding people. Array Crew, which is free, is not the only listed hiring source. Staff Me Up, which charges $149.99 a year for a premium membership, about the same as IMDb Pro, which is a total ripoff, by the way, is said to list 120,000 crew workers who have self-identified as underrepresented, presumably easing the burden on a producer who is wrestling with the Academy's Raise platform. There's that word, platform. A complex identity data entry portal through which all Oscar films must now pass. Another source of staff might be Free the Work, a 501(c)(3) organization that says the list allows your production team to self-identify beyond a dehumanizing and limiting set of options, helping them feel as their whole selves. I have a question. Isn't it dehumanizing calling people underrepresented or worse, marginalized? If you keep telling a large group of people they are underrepresented or worse, marginalized over and over again, they might actually start feeling that way, but maybe that's the whole point. Something to think about. Whatever that means, it can help with Standard A, which demands diversity in your storyline and or on-screen talent. And what are these standards, you may ask, dear viewer? Well, you may regret that because they are DIE, diversity, inclusion, and equity, or a better term would be CRT, because Hollywood's gone full critical race theory. Standard A on screen. The film must meet one of the following. At least one of the lead or significant supporting actors is from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At least 30% of all actors in secondary and more minor roles are from an underrepresented group. The main storyline, theme, or narrative of the film is centered on an underrepresented group. Standard B, the team. The film must meet one of the following. At least two of the creative leadership positions and department heads, such as the director, cinematographer, or costume designer, are from underrepresented groups, and at least one of those must belong to an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At least 6 other crew and technical positions, such as the first AD or script supervisor, are from an underrepresented racial or ethnic group. At least 30% of the film's crew is from an underrepresented group. Standard C, access. The film must meet both criteria. The distribution or financing company has paid apprenticeships or internships for underrepresented groups. The production, distribution, and or financing company offers below-the-line skill development to the underrepresented. Standard D, audience development. The film must have multiple in-house senior executives from underrepresented groups on the marketing, publicity, and or distribution teams.
Give me some of the pain and let me die.
Confused? I know I am, and I know woke Hollywood will be, and that is a good thing, but again, it gets worse because all of these organizations and those nonprofits that I'm sure aren't affiliated to any, say, political and activist organizations are here to help. Need music? Turn to the Composers Diversity Collective of DONE, I don't even know what that is, women in music, lawyers, and publicists. Those might come from diverse representation, good for standards C and D. For animation, Women in Animation. For advice about Asians, try CAPE USA. For Native Americans, Illuminative. For Middle Eastern and North African people, MENA Arts. For Latinos, the National Association of Latino Independent Producers. Oh my God, you didn't say Latinx, bigot. I've said it before and I'll say it again. The only underrepresented group in Hollywood right now is POTs, people of talent.
Got him! Got him!
But wait, there's more. Levant Consulting says the list specializes in those with disabilities. Goldhouse reshapes public opinion in favor of Asians and Pacific Islanders. Good for standards A and C. Color of Change Hollywood can keep you up to date on the latest activist trends. Women in Film is here to help with all 4 standards. This thing just keeps going. And Groovy, whose own website sports an Oscar logo, a gold check mark, and a prominent reference to standard A, B, C, and D, can, according to the Academy, streamline the collection of reporting of DEIA analytics to easily apply for RAISE. By the way, RAISE stands for Representation and Inclusion Standards. Happily, someone is here to help because RAISE is complicated. That identity data portal has been live since 2021, but Oscar films will actually be required to meet its standards for the first time this year. To date, the portal has been accessible only to those who register a film, but Academy members, we here, will be offered a walkthrough in early May. It's about time. You might want to take a look because the platform and its myriad industry support groups are designed to change the way you do business in Hollywood, and I'm sure it will turn out just about as well as the now abandoned total disaster that Time's Up was. But it certainly creates multiple paths for a lot more activism because woke Hollywood isn't going down without a fight, despite everything saying that the paying customer, you know, the people they rely on, are completely sick of this crap. In principle, I'm not against private companies pooling their resources to cultivate more talent. No, actually, I think that's a very good thing. But that's not what this is. It's, again, pure activism brought to us by activists who see everything through an activist lens. Don't believe me? Here's Viola Davis on The Woman King.
The reason why it's hard is because all of the characters are black females.
Oh, here we go again.
White directors are like, I don't want to touch that because, you know, I don't want to deal with, you know, the controversy of directing a predominantly black film, so we're not going to touch it. But we won't say we won't touch it yet. We'll say we're going to touch it because we don't want to be mean. It doesn't matter if it's reaching 98% of black females. So how do you reach white males? And how do you make people feel like, if I can't reach the white male audience, it doesn't mean that the movie can't have some commercial value. That was a big thing.
This whole process, I feel, is best described by former executive Paul Chato. Cultural revolutionists want equity, which is usurping without contribution. And hey, folks, the Oscars are bouncing back. Their last show was only the third lowest rated in its history. And despite the recent successes and snubs by the Academy of Spider-Man No Way Home, which saved Hollywood's ass, Top Gun Maverick, which saved Hollywood's ass, Avatar 2, and the most recent film, Super Mario Brothers, even a hit like John Wick 4. But don't worry, woke Hollywood is gonna put its nose to the grindstone and de-incentivize things like meritocracy and art, which won't raise anyone. But thanks to that article, which thankfully I didn't have to elaborate on, whether it meant to or not, we know exactly why woke Hollywood is failing. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, thanks for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
And then last September came an event that would change us. An actor friend said to me, what are we doing? What are we doing? Is it important? Is it even important what I do? And what of a night like tonight? Should we celebrate the joy and magic that movies bring? Well, dare I say it, more than ever.
Then he said to me, "Stay back a minute, David. I want to talk to you." And he turned to me and he said, "Listen, if you want to be successful, you're going to have to figure out how to get along with everyone. And that includes difficult people. Some people will be looking for a fight.
Compensation is the sticking point. Writers want more of it, especially from streaming projects. The union says writers on streaming shows are getting less for the same work and doing less of it. Streaming shows have fewer episodes and writers work fewer months.
We have the truth on our side, we have justice on our side, and we will fight as long as it takes.
The streamers have been very protective of their data, so we have no idea how well shows are doing. We have to take their word for it.
Think about what TV and film on the internet looks like now. Try to hold it all in your head, from House of Cards to Hacks and everything in between. Every Stranger Things and Lord of the Rings.
All right, time out. That's it, time out.
Every Dear White People, I am not okay with this, love Victor. Each Witcher, Watcher, Wednesday, Willow, and WandaVision, every Handmaid, Mandalorian, and...
Where's the override? The override!
Be here tonight. Come on and get your hands up so I can see them.
Say you're working in a leisure or luxury-based industry, one that is 100% reliant on the general public's disposable income. An industry in the past that has made mountains of money entertaining people all around the world. Then I want you to imagine, dear viewer, said industry reaching maturity, getting a little old, getting a little tired, getting a little bit too corporate, and then all the people working within that industry through their ignorance and arrogance, driving off half the paying customers.
So even I get hate from Star Wars fans when I'm like, look, dog, you're just mad the franchise isn't aging with you.
You're no Star Wars fan in my mind.
You guys, I have a very bad feeling about this.
Boy, that escalated quickly.
Ladies and gentlemen, all 754,000 of you out there and the 40% who haven't subscribed yet, I give you current year Hollywood, who is going through a major paradigm shift brought on from the last strike. So what do the workers do while their entire industry is in the midst of an apocalypse and during a time of, and no one can argue this, woke Hollywood fatigue? Of course they strike.
Experts say the ripple effects of the strike will mean pain for so many businesses. Entertainment attorney and journalist Jonathan Handel.
The economic impact of the strike 15 years ago was $200 million a day. We are probably seeing, with inflation, something more like $250 million a day.
What's frustrating is that we just came off of a great rebound from COVID year and momentum was moving forward. And then something that's completely out of our control like this happened.
It's been a long, strange journey to get here, particularly in the last few years. A lot of very hard work and dedication has gone into destroying a lot of the things we love and destroying the relationship between Hollywood and its audience. This was no accident. It was a perfect storm of greed, corruption, raging narcissism, arrogance, corporatism, and activism, all walking hand in hand while ignoring and taking for granted what they need. The paying customer, an industry that was deemed essential by the state over certain types of restaurants, salons, gyms, and countless other small businesses that were absolutely destroyed during COVID. Corporations resurrected or paid billions for franchises that they would eventually completely destroy. Star Trek killed. Star Wars is dead. The Marvel Cinematic Universe, which wasn't started by Disney, but they're sure gonna end it, promising shows like Westworld, Altered Carbon, The Umbrella Academy, The Witcher, and yes, even Game of Thrones were thrown down the intellectual meat grinder of modernity. Then, of course, there's the more recent not-so-promising shows like Santa Inc., She-Hulk, Velma, Witcher Blood Origin, The Wheel of Time, and The Rings of Power.
Get off my planet.
And that's just to name a few, and you know what they all have in common? You guessed it, they're all written by men and women from the Writers Guild of America. Now that the streaming bubble has burst, has Hollywood collectively seen the error of their ways? Now that the corporations have slowed down their spending, at least stopped spending it like President's crackhead son in China on creative talent and content for platforms that don't turn a profit? Maybe everyone in Tinseltown has finally realized that alienating the audience is a really bad idea, and maybe they have learned from the precious few successes they've had in the theaters that they had every intention of abandoning.
In just 3 weeks, Trolls World Tour made nearly $100 million in rentals. The results for Trolls World Tour have exceeded our expectations and demonstrated the viability of premium video on demand.
It made more money for Universal in 3 weeks at home than the original film did in its theatrical run. The major film studios had restructured to make streaming their primary focus. Warner Brothers released their entire 2021 slate in theaters and on HBO Max at the same time.
Perhaps this would even be a time of self-reflection after the massive layoffs, billions lost on streaming, and millions of subscribers lost on the streaming services.
Disney Plus losing more than 4 million subscribers in just the last few months.
I'm surprised by this, but not really.
Oh my God! Okay, it's happening. Everybody stay calm.
What's the procedure, everyone? What's the procedure?
Stay calm.
Wait.
Everybody calm down!
Hollywood is in full panic mode and they will eat themselves because, again, this is a strike during the apocalypse. Both sides have their gripes. Some are legit, some are stupid. But if you think I'm being hyperbolic about this being a possible Hollywood apocalypse, well, I'm not the only one saying that. The IP era's venture capitalist philosophy has poisoned movies, and Jacob Aller here makes a lot of great points while still missing the giant 900-pound blue-haired activist in the room, as well as completely leaving out a party partially responsible for this giant disaster. But don't worry, we'll get to them. It's the corporation's turn. Among so many heinous problems trickling down on our heads from the top of the film industry is that of intellectual property, because it's the IP's fault. It's not that adaptations are new, but that the ability to make a living by creating anything else has only recently been destroyed. IP obsession has killed the mid-budget movie. It's killed the movie star, partially.
Get out of my chair. Get out of my life.
And it's coming for the rest of the industry. This is as much a problem for audiences as for filmmakers at any level. Well, the audience has been trying to tell you guys for quite some time. And it all comes from the same space: unchecked greed and the familiarity with which we accept it. You're about to hear some concerns that I have brought up and many others here on YouTube and many members of the audience. And it's very coincidental that now the WGA and the people who back them in the access media are bringing them up now. Tidy, consistent, sustainable profits, the kind of thing generated by movie studios that once offered a diverse slate of reasonably budget adult dramas, teen date rom-coms, family films, and fence-swinging art movies are a thing of the past for those in charge of the industry. Other forces from the entertainment world are certainly at play, specifically the rise of prestige TV, which created this boom, by the way, which a lot of you made a lot of money, as a destination for what the movies have abandoned. Well, I don't recall any writer turning down a paycheck because Hollywood was abandoning movies. But the pivot to the IP era feels simple because it feels familiar. It's because tidy, consistent, sustainable profits aren't enough. There must be growth. There must be domination. There must be shared universes. This, my friends, is Hollywood coming to terms with the fact that they are simply a subsidiary of Silicon Valley. This attitude goes beyond being risk-averse, and I want you to remember that term, risk-averse. Risk aversion isn't new. Single-minded speculation, trying to alchemize IP into gold, is. The new robber barons of Hollywood are on a suicide run. It's a damn shame it was only bigots telling you this back in 2018. This shift is tech bro economics, Wall Street filleting, vulture capitalism, here to feast on the industry, not further it. Again, these weren't issues you heard from the access media very much or at all, but you did hear them here on YouTube. They all wanted to find the next Zuckerberg, but replace Zuckerberg with MCU and you can understand what happened to the movies. Sure, an executive could gamble a few $1 million on an idea from a, and they have it in quotes, writer, and that's one of the problems with Hollywood. There's too many in quotes writers. They could also flip the big old binder of properties to a random page, do a rail of coke. Okay, wait a minute. I long for the days Hollywood was doing a rail of coke instead of sniffing their own farts, and spend $100 million to reboot whatever's underneath. A new Ghostbusters? Another go at the dark universe? Let's do it! Monopolies, even monopolies built on unsustainable properties on the slums of a Baltic and Mediterranean avenues have the potential of being more profitable. They can define decades of strategy. Investors like that. It feels stable, yet exciting, predictable, yet potentially limitless. Except it wasn't. I knew that. You knew that, Jacob Aller knows that, and a lot of the writers who took paychecks knew that. The corpos don't give a crap. None of them watch the intellectual properties they actually paid billions for. Okay, maybe somebody on the Disney board saw Star Wars once when they were a kid or accidentally at a hotel while they were banging a hooker. I guarantee you no one on the Paramount board has seen a single episode of Star Trek the original series. And I am positive Jennifer Salke at Amazon has never read Lord of the Rings.
Will you take care of me forever and ever?
And because they don't have a clue and they don't care, they often end up hiring the wrong people. This isn't rocket science. After taking a shot at J.K. Rowling because there isn't an access media author who isn't an activist, I have to give him points for pointing out this. Pretty consistently, folks go to the movies when they recognize something and stay at home when they don't. Looking at the past 10 years of box office top 10s, it's far faster to know which movies aren't based on pre-existing property. Frozen, Inside Out, Zootopia, The Secret Life of Pets, Sing, Onward, Gravity, Tenet. That's it. 8 movies out of 100, and 2 of them let you see a person. Wall Street loved the idea of streaming because Hollywood promised them something they really couldn't before: a very sustainable and predictable flow of profits, all based on intellectual properties with built-in audiences, and all Hollywood had to do was make them and watch the money roll in. Except there was a major problem with that. Earlier in the article, Jacob says, "We, the country's movie-going public, have already been trained to understand this." Not necessarily. For one, don't confuse train with actually working and making the world go around and being too busy to notice. Each of us had our own waking up point, and more people are waking up to this garbage every day. And that's the success model. Increasingly, it's the only model because now we crave it, beaten into submission by the sheer onslaught of, remember that, requels, legacy sequels, and reboots released since Indiana Jones and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, Star Trek, and Star Wars The Force Awakens helped establish the monoculture model of filmmaking. Audiences didn't do this to pop culture, something I've been saying for years. It was the corporate powers that invested in and encouraged their most ravenous demographic, turning audiences into fandoms. While I'll agree with Jacob that the marketing departments of these corporations have exploited, divided, and vilified fandoms, but they existed mostly harmoniously long before this current crop of corporate snakes came around. It would be something if those behind these exhausted series were given artistic freedom to subvert expectations. Well, Rian Johnson was with The Last Jedi and he killed Star Wars. Or play with these properties, and if somebody of talent did this, I'm sure they could pull it off, but POTs, people of talent, are in short supply right now in Hollywood. But another facet in how this trend manifests is in its pandering, simplistic, safe filmmaking aimed at siphoning the memories and wallets of arrested adults. Well, you had me until arrested adults. Even after he tried to defend the audience, it ends up being the fans' fault because the access media is going to access media. You know who didn't get mentioned? The writers who wrote this crap will tell their story through the access media. I bring you the mental gymnastics of CBR.com. The WGA strike is a fight against everything fandoms claim to hate. Some vocal fandoms aren't supporting the writers' strike, which is baffling because the writers are fighting against everything fans claim to hate. I am as curious as you as to how they came to that conclusion. In the public relations battlefield, the Writers Guild of America should have an easy edge over the Association of Motion Picture and Television Producers. Sure, because you're only hearing one side of the story, theirs. The 2023 WGA strike is about wages for writers, but it's also about fixing everything contentious fandoms claim to hate. Faced with the choice between David Zaslav in the DC universe, what fan would side with a guy who paid himself nearly 3 times the budget of the canceled Batgirl? Turns out a lot of fans were very happy about the canceling of Batgirl, which had nothing to do with the movie itself and everything to do with what came before. Brought to you by identity politics and bad writing, something the author of this article insinuates is a myth, while also admitting there is something deeply flawed with these giant franchises that the access media has supported to this very day. Unfortunately, thanks to how profitable outrage is on YouTube and social media, I was waiting for that. Man, we got it in the second paragraph. Some are doing just that because everything from Star Wars to genre TV staples like The Flash and the CW prompt familiar cries from these disaffected viewers as quote unquote bad writing. Spoilers, it's all gonna be the paying customer's fault for just being too dumb or misinterpreting what the writers actually want to do. They need more time. We need more writers. It's not bad writing, it's the corporations. I'm saying it's both. And if, say, I was the author of this article, the last thing I would invoke after putting bad writing in quotes is the CW.
So you were saved by Batwoman. It's dope.
Yeah, I mean, it was fine.
Fine. It's Batwoman.
Yeah, but she's so cringe.
Thus, with the writers asking for fair pay, which everybody should get, better job security, well, being better at your job will give you security and other fundamental worker rights. Come on, you make it sound like you're going down to the salt mines. The bad writing chorus is on the side of the studios. You hear that, fellow paying customer and audience member? If you call out bad writing on things like the CW, a network that never turned a profit, you're on their side. Get ready for some whiplash here. Though these folks frequently blame studios Individual producers / executives like Star Wars Kathleen Kennedy, a person that CBR strongly supports. Putting aside whether the writing is bad, and it's certainly bad in this article, or rather some folks just don't like it, well, that number of some folks keeps growing every day because the writing is objectively bad.
We fell in love.
We fell in love. We did fall in love.
Could I perhaps hold the baby, please?
He doesn't take kindly to strangers.
I
may have gone too far in a few places.
Then Jacob says fandoms should support the WGA strike. Why? Well, his list of reasons is basically repeating the WGA's demands. There's AI, which is essentially a battle between the writers and producers to see who controls it. There's fair pay and job security, but as Robert Meyer Burnett says, you get what you negotiate because it's not show friends, it's show business. One of their demands is transparency with the streaming numbers so they can get their residuals, and I'm completely on the WGA side for this one. For selfish reasons, show us the numbers, Hollywood. The problem is they won't because they're low, and the WGA might want to file this under don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to. To be fair, for the few successes there are, the producers want to hide those numbers to not pay writers. Then there's the controversy of the mini room, which is basically a very long audition process for the writers that does end up screwing them over, but I would also say if you want to solve that problem, just don't go. Go out and make your own stuff. There's never been a better time to do that than right now. The WGA has countered the mini room with mandating how many writers can be on a show. The WGA also wants a minimum mandatory pay for its writers no matter how bad they are. Why not ask for 18-karat gold toilets and immortality while you're at it? And hey, if you get it, great. Back to the article. How the WGA strike could help make even cash grab shows and movies even better, and they show us a picture of the Rings of Power. We'll get to that in a second. Jacob from CBR states that employing more writers and giving them more time will only ensure fandoms get the level of quality and storytelling they want. I seem to recall Amazon giving the creators and writers of the Rings of Power 3 years and all the money in the world to make the biggest streaming flop of all time. I also seem to recall Jessica Gao and the writing room of She-Hulk having 3 years to create one of the worst shows of 2022.
And the fact that we were able to very accurately every single time predict exactly what the toxic reaction was going to be, like, it's both sad but also goes to show like how tired and unoriginal these guys are, you know?
You need people like me so you can point your fingers and say that's the bad guy. So, what'll I make you?
I don't think more writers have helped things like late night television, which had teams of people writing that garbage.
I was trying to think of a good a joke, because I'm not really, I don't want to say I'm not good at telling jokes, but I'm not, I make a living out of it, but I need my writers. I need them real bad.
Leading to ratings and profit erosions, but the good news is all of these shows have been off the air since the beginning of the strike, and America is beginning to heal. So while some amateur critics make their names decrying the quote-unquote bad writing, which is the 4th time they mentioned it in this article, in their favorite franchises, they should still support the WGA strike, because if their complaints are made in good faith, then giving writers more time, more help, and more pay can correct that. Now, when it comes to the amateur critic or the YouTuber, this is something the producers, the writers, the access media, quite frankly, all of Hollywood, are scared to death of as much as AI. The one thing they cannot compete against, you and I.
If I were to ask you what is the deadliest animal on Earth, which animal kills the most humans per year? The answer is it's the mosquito, the disease-spreading mosquito. AI is the ultimate expression of a Silicon Valley ethic called optimization. It means maximum efficiency at minimum cost. Well, obviously the work won't be as good. The shows will all feel the same. Public will, of course, notice. Moviegoers and TV watchers will get bored, the poor product, and they'll stop watching. Instead, they'll amuse their boredoms with TikTok and YouTube, 2 other mosquitoes that we allowed to engorge on us. We're going to do what we always do. We're going to swat away the mosquitoes, and the business will win.
Well, gentlemen, when the shit hits the fan, some guys run and some guys stay.
Variety laments we used to treat movie stars like gods. Hollywood grapples with the loss of young star power. And the biggest factor in this, Variety doesn't even mention social media. No, social media did not kill the movie star. The movie star killed itself by going on social media, and then we got to know them. And the same goes for everyone else in Tinseltown. We remember Hollywood's collective act during the Summer of Love, with organizations like Bad Reboot saying enough white comfort. I seem to recall the vast majority of Hollywood supporting things like lockdowns. You know, the thing that they were allowed to work through when people like my wife were losing their business.
Screw your freedom.
And I also want to point out that these lockdowns greatly bolstered the corporations that the WGA is fighting right now. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up the unified SAG, who was strangely silent when their own people were refusing the jab. So yes, the corporations are largely to blame. It was their greed, their hubris, and their fear. The risk aversion from activism, diversity, inclusivity, and equity.
Shit.
That's led to things like soulless remakes where the only difference is a race or gender swapped character, or a completely vandalized beloved property, for example, an intersectional feminist Lord of the Rings. The inevitable fan backlash occurs, and then we get the gaslighting and fan baiting.
Long story short, there are hundreds of those. Hundreds.
This all comes from risk aversion, because better the fan be called a racist than the corporation, the writer, or the adult pretender. And now there's a writer's strike and potentially an actors and directors strike, which would shut the whole damn thing down during a Hollywood apocalypse. By all accounts, this strike could last as late as fall, maybe even Christmas. And there was a time where the audience could put pressure on the corporation to get a deal done, but we don't live in that time anymore. Hollywood, if you actually give a shit what your paying customer thinks, I think the key to winning a public relations argument is not pissing the public off.
Everybody knows you never go full retard.
Oh well, too late. It looks like those Hollywood culture winds of change are a-blowing. Can you feel it? And this time, I don't think it's broken wind. Well, it's hard not to notice, considering that Hollywood just completely shut down. Now, you might have forgotten that the writers have been on strike for almost 3 months. But not to be upstaged, the Film Actors Guild has decided to stop pretending professionally.
No contract, no peace.
And the poor writers can't catch a break, because apparently the actors need more attention.
We are the victims here. We are being victimized.
Hollywood is closed for business. What will we do? It's been 3 months without late night television, no Jimmys, no Stephen Colbert, with bangers like this.
There was Alpha, then Delta, then Omicron X, but this latest variant might be the best. It's XBB.1.5.
I would like to remind you, dear viewer, that it took teams of highly paid writers to come up with that stuff.
These are our writers, and I'll stick myself in there because I'm WGA too, and they're so important to our show. They write the monologue, the meanwhile, the cold open, and without these people, this show would be called
A Better World.
And I'd also like to remind you that over the past 3 months, we will have been robbed of what I'm sure will be Shakespearean dialogue like this.
Stop! I'm trying to be whatever this is.
I don't know what to be. Tell me what to be.
I don't know, just don't be a dick.
It's too late. Look at me. I'm such a dick.
It's never too late to stop being a dick.
Give me something for the pain and let me die.
That's right, the pencils are down, the laptops are unplugged, and there's no access to ChatGPT. Yes, the very thing that they're striking against, the writers use when they have that thing called writer's block, or no talent at all.
Every day there's some news story about AI, and there's no doubt that those services will continue to improve. And right now, as some of our members call them, they're plagiarism machines, and they have no business in the writing of scripts.
Smells like cat piss.
And now joining them in resolute solidarity is the over 160,000 members of the Film Actors Guild. And now we live in a world with no professional pretending. That's right, no pretending on television. no pretending in film, no pretending to be interested in a cause to help promote their film or TV show, no pretending at award shows, no pretending to be interested in one of the 50 interviewers they have to talk to on a press junket, and no pretending on red carpets. And the last two are going to have the unintended consequences of probably helping their film, while simultaneously being bad news for content creators because we're going to be deprived of wisdom like this.
I remember when I was doing Hunger Games, nobody had ever put a woman in the lead of an action movie. Girls and boys can both identify with a male lead, but boys cannot identify with a female lead. Oh, absolutely. You bitch!
Labor strife is nothing new in Hollywood. As I stated in my last strike video, something feels different this time. Sure, during COVID, Hollywood went all in on streaming because all of their platforms were ready. What a coincidence. While they abandoned the movie theaters. Not to worry though, because the taxpayer was there to bail the movie theaters out. Also, Hollywood could abandon them again. We'll get to that. Then the streaming bubble blew up in their face, leading to a financial collapse. Now, I'm not sure how you have a financial collapse when you're not making any money, but that's what happened. Maybe it's just a giant shell game. Now, we have heard that Disney and Warner Brothers may have been fudging their numbers, and I guarantee you the rest do it too. Then there's the problem of the actual content that they put on these platforms, including but not limited to Santa Inc., Velma, Willow, The Wheel of Time, Peter Pan, Cuties, anything from the MCU and anything from Lucasfilm. Then there's all the flops. This is from The Guardian, not exactly the citadel of journalism, but I like this headline. Summer flopbusters. Why were Indiana Jones and The Flash box office bombs? Well, probably because they sucked. Why did they suck? Simply put, overproduced by producers from Hollywood and poorly written by members of the Writers Guild of America.
If the Writers Guild wasn't such an obnoxious organization, it's the Whiners Guild, I call it. But I'm very anti-Writers Guild, but yeah, very.
And specifically in the Flash and Indiana Jones case, featuring two annoying actors from the Film Actors Guild. What was that, Garrett? Oh, I'm sorry, the Screen Actors Guild. So there was the aforementioned flops on streaming, and now we have a lot of them in the theaters, including, but not limited to, Ant-Man, Dungeons & Dragons, Shazam, Fury of the Gods, The Little Mermaid, Elemental, The Flash, Indiana Jones and the Dial of Dysentery. So sure, it's a perfect time to strike. Now, there have been Hollywood strikes during economic downturns in the past. The last one was during the recession. What past strikes in Hollywood didn't have was potentially you and I as competition, or even worse, an adversary, and a culture war. A culture war Disney CEO Bobby Iger said he didn't want any part of, and then he follows that up by trying to put out fire with gasoline.
What about DeSantis, who's going to be on the hustings, so to speak, for the next year? And he's made this a part of his campaign, attacking Disney, saying it's a woke corporation. We've put the company on a pedestal, but they've really embraced the idea of getting the sexualized content in the program line that I'm not willing to cross. I mean, that's what he said. I quoted DeSantis there.
It's not our goal to be involved in a culture war. Our goal is to continue to tell wonderful stories and have a positive impact on the world. The notion that Disney is in any way sexualizing children, quite frankly, is preposterous. And inaccurate.
Welcome to the Disney Plus. This is me, Pride Celebration Spectacular.
Texted me this morning, Gen Z is 30 to 40% queer than the other generation's moms, so Disney better get with it.
Our leadership over there has been so welcoming to my not at all secret gay agenda.
They've been really open to exploring queer stories. I'm on the production side, and so kind of the only way to have these canonical trans characters, canonical asexual characters, canonical bisexual characters is to give them stories where they can be their whole selves.
I identify as a biromantic asexual. I want to add the pockets of the LGBTQ community that you don't see. I was I want to get gay advanced.
And so we no longer say ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. It's hello everyone or hello friends.
We were targeting Gen Z and millennials. We were targeting a younger.
And all this content's going to kids who don't know any of this, and even if they're in a household like Keith that have supportive parents, they're still getting all of this information from media of what is normal.
My fellow members of the audience, whether you're for Ron DeSantis or not, which really doesn't matter to me, all are welcome here. You can't deny that is a pretty good clip. Couldn't have done it better myself. It's been a perfect storm and a complete disaster for Hollywood, and the strikes, with some legit concerns, have made things so much worse. Have we achieved peak television, possibly, peak streaming, maybe, peak Hollywood blockbuster, that remains to be seen, but the one thing I know we have achieved is peak woke Hollywood. I have no dog in this fight. I am certainly no fan of Hollywood executives or producers, although I have talked to a few cool ones, but I know the vast majority would screw over their own mother. And as far as the Film Actors Guild is concerned, I'm sorry, the Screen Actors Guild, I believe Hollywood actor Matthew Marsden puts it best. If the majority of Hollywood actors hadn't been so derisive about half of the country, people might give a damn about them going on strike.
Lots of famous people.
Lots and lots of famous people.
Just a shit ton of famous people.
But you only get this many famous people together if the issue's
one that truly matters to all of us.
A disease or
ecological crisis or
a racist, abusive coward who could permanently damage the fabric of our society.
Do the math. Do we really want to give nuclear weapons to a man whose signature move is firing?
Firing things?
So, we don't let those criminal bastards get backing off and you're going, whoa! You're like, no, don't say the last part. You lost 50% of your audience. And that's, part of why so much of the nation of that 50% looks at us in Hollywood as like going, oh yeah, another celebrity over there on the West Coasters and the elite in the Northeast. And that's what y'all say. Because even from just a sales point of view, don't tab that gotcha on the end, and then you have your audience is twice as big.
You know, you wish there would have been this kind of solidarity when the Screen Actors Guild members were forced to get a jab. To be fair to SAG president Fran Drescher, she said she wanted to strike over that, but couldn't, and SAG didn't. So after years of hearing that certain films weren't made for us that used to be, and when we don't see them or don't like them, the audience gets vilified, and after years of seeing stories we used to all love get destroyed beyond all recognition, again including but not limited to Doctor Who, Star Trek, Star Wars, Marvel Comics, DC Comics, I could go on, and expressing we really didn't like what you did to Luke Skywalker or Spock or Galadriel, we were called racist, sexist, and any other pejorative you could think of. Oh, I am not done. And after years of being told classic stories like The Lord of the Rings weren't accessible, despite being one of the best-selling books of all time, translated into multiple languages and adapted into the greatest trilogy of all time, earning billions at the box office worldwide, a classic that will never be equaled. And again, it's not limited to Lord of the Rings. We have two recent examples, Little Mermaid and Snow White. Remember that little thing I said about timing being everything? Well, this news dropped 2 days after SAG decided to go on strike. Exclusive, Snow White and the Seven Politically Correct Companions. First pictures of new live-action remake of Disney classic shows stand-in princess walking with diverse band of merry men and women after row over using dwarf actors. And yes, those pictures look awful, but that's not the worst thing. Yes, they are stand-ins, but that is an accurate representation of what this film is going to be, and they're going to release it in theaters. And I see this picture, and for one, I can smell it from here, and it's precisely the reason I don't go to Burning Man. At first, Disney denied these were real, and then they had to come out and admit that they were. But that's not the worst part. In response to this, Snow White actress Renee Zegler then unintentionally destroys the entire representation argument. Extremely appreciative of the love I feel from those defending me online, but please don't tag me in the nonsensical discourse about my casting. I really, truly do not want to see it. So I leave you with these photos. I hope every child knows that they can be a princess no matter what. I hope you meant girl, and if you did, then I absolutely agree with you. Hollywood, you're gonna have to understand why the audience is feeling a bit apathetic, and you're gonna have to accept that we're in the decline of the movie star, and that started coincidentally with the advent of social media.
I take responsibility.
I take responsibility.
I take responsibility.
You know what I was saying to my friend? I go, you know what that is? These motherfuckers haven't gotten any attention for months because they haven't been filmed.
And this has all led to a giant cluster of the likes Hollywood has never seen.
What are we doing? Moving around furniture on the Titanic?
These conditions will potentially produce an absolute collapse of an entire industry.
There's way too many moving parts right now, too many greedy and it's collapsing the entire industry. What the hell was that? That was my shelf.
Oh my god, it's collapsing the entire industry. Oh no!
This is Hollywood.
everybody.
The higher power works in mysterious ways and has perfect comedic timing. Now, I'm not saying that the writers and actors, the good ones anyway, don't have some very legitimate concerns, including AI.
Obviously, AI, which I think is just overhyped to death in terms of the worries that actors and writers are going to be replaced rather than assisted, which is what I think will happen.
And while AI right now is essentially a search algorithm and not a very accurate one, I think it's a good idea to get out ahead of it, although I think it's something a writer or an actor could deal with in an individual negotiation. Hey, I have an example of AI. I asked ChatGPT to write a Nerdrotic video about the Hollywood strike, and this is what they came up with. Cut to dramatic background music as images of picket signs and protesting Hollywood workers flash on the screen. Gary, voiceover. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is this Hollywood strike all about? Well, my fellow geeks, it's a battle for the ages. The creative minds behind the camera, the unsung heroes who make our favorite shows and movies come to life, have risen up against the studio titans, demanding fair treatment and respect for their invaluable contributions. Cut to Gary back in his chair. Gary, these are the writers, the directors, the animators, the costume designers, the set builders, and countless others who work tirelessly behind the scenes, often without proper recognition. They're the ones who bring magic to our screen, but unfortunately, they're being subjugated to a system that has taken advantage of their passion and dedication for far too long. So no, basically, I don't think there's anything to worry about right now, at least until the robots come to kill us all, and by then it'll be too late anyway. All sarcasm aside, there is one issue I am completely on the side of the writers and the actors: studio transparency.
We just want transparency. I mean, you know, tell us what you're making, and if you're making less, okay, we'll share in your pain just like we share in your profit. But they're not offering any of that. We're going to shut you out, not tell you anything about how much money we're making, and then we'll say, hey, we're poor. It's you know, we're not making enough money. It's ridiculous.
Now, I might be in agreement with the WGA and the SAG for different reasons, but sure, I want them to get paid, and I really want to see those numbers.
I can promise you that when a streamer like Netflix says we're not going to release our numbers, it's because they're screwing someone over somewhere. That's why they do it.
I agree with Sean Gunn. I absolutely think they're screwing somebody over, but you still might want to file this under don't ask questions you don't want to know the answers to. I think one of the reasons they don't share the numbers is because they're incredibly low. Otherwise, they would. And yes, they are screwing somebody over, the stockholder. You know who else is getting screwed over? All the non-union workers in Hollywood attached to that industry and the theaters. I'll give credit where credit is due. Tom Cruise, the last Hollywood movie star who was in a pretty damn good movie, Mission Impossible 7, go see it. Tom did try to lobby the SAG to allow actors to still promote their films even during the strike. He reportedly spoke of the precarious state of movie theaters, which are struggling to rebound after COVID, and that promoting films also benefits actors. Well, as the people who make up the pretend and the people who act out the pretend fight the people who pay for the pretend during the summer of the flopbuster and peak television, all squabbling for money that quite frankly is drying up in Hollywood, what are we plebs to do? Well, I agree with actor Clifton Duncan here on Twitter. The worst thing about the Hollywood shutdown is that the only entertainment we have is podcasts, YouTube, video games, books, music, family, and 100 years of superior television and film. Boom. I would also like to add that Hollywood has put in their fair share of work turning the audience into the adversary. And that is the other unintended consequence of striking during a culture war, turning your paying customer into the competition.
There is now a completely different set of rules that goes into how we decide to be entertained and how we decide to pay for what that entertainment is. Because if you and I and everybody else in this room wanted to be entertained for free for the rest of the month, we could be, between YouTube or an app or anything else that is part of the social media. That's free. That means it does not cost us anything. Now, our desire, I think, as an audience is that we want to go off and be challenged by what we see, and so we go off and we'll try to do that.
But not to worry, I'm sure Hollywood has plenty of content to get them through what is their second shutdown in almost 4 years. To be fair, Barbie and Oppenheimer had great openings. Congratulations, Hollywood. Enjoy what may be the last big box office weekend for a very, very long time. Eventually, the WGA and the SAG will work it out, but by the time that they do, I think there's going to be a lot fewer of them. You call it a strike, I call it a purge. The woke party is over and we're way past the hangover stage. It's time for Hollywood to go to rehab. Entertainment as a whole is going through a paradigm shift, one that corporate Hollywood is too bloated to keep up with. Maybe Hollywood is just a tired 20th century old model that lingered through the 20th century, but then eventually couldn't adapt. They're already losing a generation. It's not like you see a ton of kids at movie theaters anymore. I leave you with the wise words of the late Douglas Adams, given in his last interview over 20 years ago, where he predicted what I believe is the paradigm shift that we're experiencing right now.
At the end of the 20th century, we came up with this exciting new buzzword, which is interactive. The interesting thing about the word interactive is that the 20th century is the only time we've actually needed such a word, because it's the only time we've been surrounded by non-interactive forms of communication and entertainment, like CDs, videos, cinema, radio, television, all that kind of stuff that however you react to it, it doesn't react to your reaction. Now you go back to the 19th century and any time in human history before then, and it was predominantly interactive. You'd perform to audiences and so on and so forth, and everybody was in touch with everybody else. So that's what we kind of lost in the 20th century, and effectively we can't do what we used to do simply because there are now so damn many of us. But what our technologies are beginning to do is put us back in touch with each other much more intimately in ways that we used to be, and that's what we've got to kind of readjust to.
Let's talk about the strike again. It's been 105 days since the strike began at time of recording, and the good news is there hasn't been any late night talk show hosts polluting YouTube. The better news is there hasn't been any simpleton adult pretenders assaulting our senses with their stupidity. The bad news, for Hollywood anyway, and the WGA and the SAGs, is there is a backlog of adult pretender stupidity that will last us content creators a year.
That it's no longer 1937. That is
not going to be saved by the prince.
She's not going to be saved by the prince.
I take responsibility.
The cartoon was made 85 years ago, and therefore it's extremely dated.
There's a lot of ways to lose your house. Some of it is financial, some of it is karma.
I take responsibility.
And Justin and I wrote a Star Wars movie together.
Yeah, we did.
Picketing Disney is more fun.
Oh, it's a delight. I take responsibility.
If I'm going to stand there 18 hours in a dress of an iconic Disney princess, I deserve to be paid for every hour that it is streamed online.
Right. There's worse news for Hollywood. The previous writer's strike was over at this point, and this one has no end in sight. The other big difference, back in 2007, 2008, people actually cared, and for this strike, they don't. But what about Barbenheimer? And that will be a very good question. Both Barbie and Oppenheimer are massive successes and have turned it around for the movie theaters and given Hollywood a box office run that they haven't seen for years, and thanks to the unfortunate timing of the strike, won't see for years. Add to that the massive flops, Disney is falling apart, and streaming services regularly losing hundreds of millions of dollars per quarter, including but not limited to Disney Plus, which lost over $500 million last quarter, Peacock, which lost over $500 million last quarter, and Paramount Plus, which lost over $500 million last quarter. And Paramount Plus has one of the more successful franchises on streaming. No, not Star Trek, the Sheridanverse. Now that Tinseltown is experiencing this existential and financial crisis, it's led them to do something they've been putting off for a long, long time. Some introspection and retrospection. Maybe now they realize that they are not only on the verge of failing, they have been failing, and more importantly, they are coming to terms with the fact that they need to let things fail. Now that Hollywood is discussing things openly, has this led to a fearless and searching moral inventory, seeking out the exact nature of their wrongs? I wish that were the case. No, they're hitting the panic button because they're going broke. This is a bit of a follow-up to my last strike video, which was a follow-up to the previous strike video, and I'm sure there'll be more. But you've heard from me. Let's hear from the people working in the industry and also observe observe the massive blind spot they still have. We could start with The Coming Cinema Apocalypse is Here. It's my kind of title, but I found one that's even better. Death Spiral of Hollywood Monopolies. Too big to fail? Not so fast. A showrunner's cautionary memo. I just want to point out that in both of these articles, one written by a Hollywood producer, the other written by a Hollywood showrunner, they're using terms like death spiral and cinema apocalypse. Remember when YouTubers used terms like that? Okay, I'll be real. I'm going to use a term like that for this video. And it was considered hyperbole. Guess not so much anymore. This one is written by Elena Smith. She is the creator and showrunner of Apple TV's Dickinson. No, I've never heard of it. Hollywood is broken. I like the sound of that one too. More than $500 billion have been wiped off the market value of the world's biggest media companies this year. Oh no. While on the streets, hundreds of thousands of writers and actors, which might be your problem, are on strike, bringing the industry to a grinding halt at the moment when it most needs to prove its resilience. Now be careful, Elena, that could be interpreted as questioning the timing of the strike, and we all know that your unions don't like to be questioned. Just ask Stephen Amell, who called the Film Actors Guild strike reductive and then was forced to take the walk of shame. Let's see where she goes with this, as the oddly mismatched mega companies who currently produce, own, and distribute TV shows and movies fumble to align themselves on basic issues like minimum compensation and worker protection. Along with the looming technology shifts of AI, it has become clear that the only goal these corporations have in common is to gain market power and then exploit it. That is to monopolize. This monopoly power, once grabbed, is used to lower costs and hedge risk for Wall Street investors. Well, she's not wrong, primarily by reducing or eliminating the bargaining leverage of artists and independent producers, by continuing to consolidate or vertically integrate along different and conflicting lines of the business, and by raising prices for the consumer, all while the entertainment they sell continues to decline in cultural relevance. Again, Elena is not wrong, and this decline is going to continue, and I would go so far as to say Hollywood is in a doom loop. Once again, though, I think it would be prudent to point out that this is a doom loop created by the producers and writers of Hollywood. I didn't hear any writers complaining back in 2018 and 2019 when producers were passing out those first look deals like Coke at an Oscars after party, including but not limited to Ryan Murphy, creator of Glee, getting a $300 million first look deal from Netflix.
And I thought, wow.
Or director of The Flop, A Wrinkle in Time, Ava DuVernay, getting $100 million from Warner Brothers. A deal Warner Brothers terminated recently, but I'm sure it had nothing to do with the strike. Or Hollywood's favorite insufferable feminist Phoebe Waller-Bridge getting $60 million from Amazon. Or Dan and Dave, Dumb and Dumber from Game of Thrones, getting $200 million from Netflix. And last and very least, the king repurposer and co-destroyer of Star Trek and Star Wars, Jar Jar Abrams, was given $250 million by Warner Brothers. And most of the people I just mentioned since signing those contracts have produced next to nothing. Let's see what the solution is. Without regulation, no, and we'll get to that, of these monopolies, Hollywood will succumb to a death spiral, planting a stake in the heart of the entertainment industry, one of America's most lucrative exports, whose stories and stars have defined our culture for the past century or more. As far as regulation is concerned, even with the laws that are on the books now, there's not a single politician that will do anything about it because they're the ones who ushered in this era, and I would like to point out, these are politicians that Hollywood largely supported. As far as new regulation is concerned, because I know that's what you're talking about, hell no, I don't want a single taxpayer penny spent on you fixing your dying industry. The best regulation is to let it fail. The monopolistic streaming system, as it turns out, works for nobody in Hollywood. Well, not anymore. Not the execs, not the shareholders, and wait for it, not the audience. I was wondering when you were going to bring us up, because we are part of that massive blind spot that every creative, every executive, and every member of the Access Media has in Tinseltown, and something that neither of these articles brings up. It's primarily why I came to YouTube and channels like mine exist. There is no way in hell you guys haven't even considered the possibility that alienating half of the voting population of this country might not have dire financial consequences. More on that later. Then Elena goes over the history of the streaming wars, which I've done quite a bit on this channel, calling it the great disruption of television and film, which is exactly what it was, but She tries to push the narrative that Hollywood was duped into this when they knew exactly what they were doing. The only ones I believe were duped were shareholders and investors. Silicon Valley's Hollywood offered Wall Street something that Hollywood could never offer before: massive potential profits from streaming services and a steady revenue stream. Unfortunately, it turned out to all be a lie. Artists too were bamboozled by Netflix's sexy new model of overpaying everyone upfront in order to exclusively control the back end. Well, I don't know if Hollywood is known for controlling the back end, and keep any quantifiable audience response hidden globally forever. And once Netflix made this model the new normal, other companies followed suit. So you admit that you, possibly, and other creatives have accepted overpay upfront, knowing that you wouldn't get anything from the back end. Well, that's called you get what you negotiate. But by all means, negotiate a performance-based contract. That should solve that problem, right? Of course, you're not going to do that because that's not really what you want, according to a WGA negotiator.
Our residuals, they're not as good as they were. But there's also just larger issues that are sort of more widespread than just the residual issue, because even what the writers used to get paid up front, if a writer writes something that ends up earning a lot of money for its producer, the studio, that writer deserved a portion of that, and that money was paid up front.
Now there are no more Nielsen ratings. That's partially true. None that tell us the whole story. No more box office numbers. There's plenty of box office numbers, although we all know all of these numbers are fudged. No more publicly available feedback loop of any kind to reveal to anyone, artists, executives, audiences, or critics, which of the ever-mounting heap of shows or movies were actually being watched and enjoyed. Oh, honey, there's been a feedback loop from the audience, one that you have either ignored or vilified us for. Elena, the author of this article, showed Dickinson was one of just 4 series to launch Apple's global streaming service in 2019, and to this day I have no earthly clue how many people have seen it, nor what value my near decade of creative labor generated for the company. Not only do I have no metrics for my own success, I don't even know how Apple would determine those metrics in the first place. Again, I'm gonna call bullshit on this. Every streaming service knows exactly how each show performs down to the second. And this is something maybe you could have negotiated before you signed a contract with Apple. Did either you or your agent not ask this question beforehand? But to back her up on those streaming numbers, it is true. Very few people know exactly what they are because they're low. If they were exceeding expectations, Netflix, Apple, Paramount Plus, Peacock, and Disney Plus would be screaming them from the rooftops. Seems, sadly for woke Hollywood, and far too late, reality is setting in. So we've reached the final episode of the limited series. The streaming bubble has burst. The story is a scam. Then she goes on to quote David Zaslav, of all people, the most popular person in woke Hollywood. I kind of like him. Let's face it, the strategy to collapse all windows, starve linear TV and theatrical, and spend money with abandon while making a fraction in return, all in the service of growing sub numbers, has ultimately proven to be deeply flawed. I'd also like to add that another aspect of your industry that's deeply flawed is your fan-baiting marketing departments and your gaslighting adult pretenders. She also mentions that the only audience that matters is Wall Street, and while that is true, don't act like you ever gave a shit about the paying customer, and the only potential star is the platform itself. And who does Hollywood have to thank for that? You got it, themselves. Tough times for woke Hollywood, and you just hate to see it. This brings us briefly to our next article with a headline that sounds like a title to one of my videos, and it may be, except it's written by the producer of Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, Ted Hope. The coming cinema apocalypse is here. Telltale signs that it may get far worse before it gets a wee bit better. Now, Ted points out 51 reasons why the great Hollywood apocalypse is here. We're just going to go over a few. Possible proof the cinema apocalypse is upon us. We are controlled by surveillance capitalism. Wrong. We're controlled by surveillance. I can't call it a technocracy. How about a tech idiocracy? One that Hollywood helped build and fortify. The information age is over. The value of information has been destroyed. There is is no reliable source of truth. Well, whose fault is that? Again, that lays at the feet of your corporate overlords in Silicon Valley, in Hollywood, and in Washington. Twitter just recently exposed that members of our alphabet agencies were working at Twitter to suppress our free speech. You don't think that's going on in every other corporation that provides information? We no longer have a counterculture or anything that can be the necessary cultural course corrector. Unfortunately, the counterculture that used to be artists in the film industry, the publishing industry, the comic book industry, and the music industry, just to name a few, became firm supporters of the system and cancel culture. We're still out here, but Hollywood is far too busy demonizing it rather than recognizing it. I've been saying this for years. Many in the industry have conjectured that the streaming ecosystem may eventually shrink to 4 major platforms. If that's the case, then we'd sacrifice cable only to replace it with a broadcast-style monopoly. And here's another thing many of us have been saying for quite some time. Despite a good weekend from Barbie and Nolan, the theatrical market is still shrinking. The market is down 16% from its 2018 peak. Ticket prices are up and revenues are still down. That's because audience is way down. Way, 25%. When the beast ate everything else, Marvel seems to be mortally wounded, and the overlords seem clueless of what to fill the vacuum with. Is the clock ticking faster? Yes. And this thing goes on and on. He states quality of work is declining. Yeah, no shit. And they have no clue how to be talent friendly. And I would like to add to that, the talent has no clue how to be audience friendly. You get the point. Things in Hollywood are fucked. And back to Elena's article, Hollywood Monopoly's Death Spiral. Here again is her big solution. Here's what we can do. We need a political coalition, hell no, to break up the studio streamers, or we will lose the ability to sustain the TV and film industry that has been the beating heart of our culture for over 100 years. And the floodgates are open. Zachary Levi calls out Hollywood garbage, urges moviegoers not to watch crappy films. Studios don't care enough to actually make it great, like the recent DC films. I can't believe we have 2 more to go. One flop with Blue Beetle and one plop with Aquaman 2. And director Charlie Kaufman essentially said the same thing as Zach. Charlie Kaufman criticizes Hollywood for putting out garbage as seductive, cynical sales pitches. And now Hollywood striking writers are running out of money. So both articles brought up some pretty legitimate reasons that led up to this current woke Hollywood crisis, but the blind spot remains, although Ted Hope got the closest. As far as that movie-going audience being way down to the tune of 25% from the 2018 peak, well, I guess it's got something to do with alienating and attacking the paying customer, subverting beloved franchises while shitting on the source material, during COVID, shaming people for wanting to go to work while being able to freely professionally pretend, exacerbating the division in this country while rooting on the summer of love, producers like Jar Jar Abrams' company Bad Reboot saying things like enough white comfort, all while not having a single problem with one of Hollywood's biggest studios, Disney, becoming outright anti-family, shrinking Finn on the Force Awakens poster for China, covering up the late Chadwick Boseman's face on the Black Panther poster for China, and of course, thanking a concentration camp in China. And if you're looking for sympathy from the paying customer, well, I think the response to this tweet sums it up. After nearly 100 days on strike, Hollywood writers are taking financial hits, uncertain when they'll have a steady flow of income again. I'm feeling like I'm subsidizing this strike with my savings in a way that's starting to get scary. From oil field rando, oh neat. Kind of like the time me and all my friends were getting laid off from the oil field because they shut down the world and Hollywood just kept saying, stay home and save lives. And we tried to find work for months on end. Then there's this little problem. YouTube does not respect the writer's strike. This could be a big problem for TV. Now, I personally could care less what big YouTubers think of the writer's strike, but this tidbit of information is very interesting, and many of us saw this coming. The money pipeline that funded the TV shows that striking writers worked on is now increasingly headed to YouTube instead, because this is the most ad-friendly platform out there. That's not the only way YouTube is becoming television. Almost half of US YouTube viewing now happens on TVs rather than phones or desktops. In fact, research agency Neil's flagship Gauge chart now has YouTube as the single biggest channel in the US. Bottom line, you pissed off a lot of people, you bored a lot of people to tears, you're losing a generation, and a lot of us just found other things to do. If you think about it, we're not just talking about a TV show, a movie, a franchise, or a studio. We're talking about an entire industry. Hollywood got woke and went broke.
My name is Margaret, and I am SAG actor, and I'm a background actor.
This is the tale of Margaret E. Owens of Philadelphia, background actor. Once upon a time, in a land where dreams came to life, there lived a talented soul named Margaret. She toiled tirelessly, day after day, spending countless hours on a magical set, bathed in the soft glow of the spotlight.
Sorry, do I know you? So now that I'm standing in front of you, you have nothing to add?
I didn't say anything.
So you didn't just call me a fat ass as I jogged by? There's no one around.
I'm telling you, I didn't say a word.
You're not that skinny anyway. Keep running.
Yet, amidst all the enchantment, she received no credit for her tireless efforts.
I'm lucky I have a 9-to-5 job that I can fall back on, but truly, this is my passion and I can't do it.
Well, boo who? It has been, at time of recording, 131 days since the Writers Guild of America went on strike and 58 days since the Film Actors Guild has gone on strike. Let's see how things are going.
Big news from Hollywood. Late night shows and Saturday Night Live are going dark.
Hi, I'm Jimmy Fallon.
I'm Stephen Colbert.
I'm Jimmy Kimmel. I thought when you said Jimmy, you meant me, Jimmy, but you meant Jimmy.
I always mean you.
But when you say
Seth,
Seth Meyers, who do you mean?
I mean John Oliver.
It's the five of us together for maybe an hour a day.
Oh, somebody kill me, please!
Efforts at damage control are on over at The Tonight Show after a devastating article claimed that host Jimmy Fallon has created a toxic workplace.
Some former employees even claimed there were so-called crying rooms where staffers would sit and weep. Others claimed their hair was thinning and even suicidal thoughts due to the stress of working for Fallon.
I need my writers. I need them real bad.
Mila Kunis describes Masterson, a convicted rapist, as having a caring nature and says he is an outstanding role model.
Oof. We are aware of the pain that has been caused by the character letters that we wrote on behalf of Andy Masterson.
We support victims.
But after weeks on the picket line, the strike is taking its toll.
This is the first month since I moved out here that I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent this month.
What about food, gas, all those things you have to get through the day?
Things are really hard right now. Things are really dire.
I don't think I'm going out on a limb here by saying things aren't going so well for woke Hollywood, and we're seeing it break up right before our eyes, and this may come as a surprise to everyone working in Tinseltown, although it shouldn't. There's a lot of people who either don't care or who are enjoying the hell out of this.
The LA Times came out with a poll and it showed that not a lot of people are really thinking about that. I think it was only like 38% of respondents say they sympathize more with the striking actors and writers.
People are struggling to make their bills, keep their lights on. I mean, the way the economy is, even though you keep hearing from this administration how strong and wonderful everything is, people aren't feeling that. Inflation's through the roof. And so people don't care as much about, striking writers and striking actors. It's about number 74 on their list of 75 things. I don't think you're going to get a big public outcry supporting this.
Again, most human beings on planet Earth could care less about the WGA or the Film Actors Guild strikes, and that should shake the entire entertainment industry to its core. But there are some who have broken out the marshmallows and they're roasting them on the Hollywood Inferno. The strikes are just the latest of the self-inflicted wounds, including but not limited to Hollywood abandoning viable revenue streams like licensing, physical media, and the theaters so they can go all in on the new Silicon Valley / Netflix tech model of fake it till you make it until they found out they couldn't make it. The streaming bubble burst, and now the entertainment capital of the world is dealing with a little shrinkage, and they're not taking it too well. Woke Hollywood is starting to eat itself, and it's glorious. But how could you say that? People are losing their jobs. Yes, to the good people in Hollywood and the innocent parties who have nothing to do with the culture war, my heart goes out to you. Unfortunately, the face of your industry, the producers, the writers, and the adult pretenders, seems to hate the customer. That's the perception, and therefore that's the reality. And it's not like we haven't been warning you that this was coming for years. We tried to warn you that demonizing half of the country because they supported a president, a guy Hollywood used to love, wasn't a good idea. Florida. We tried to warn you that rooting on the Summer of Love, which was cities in America burning, probably wasn't a good idea. One or two of us might have pointed out that allowing activists who don't like things like capitalism into your companies might not be very good for an industry that needs to make money. And I'm pretty sure a few people brought up that allowing that activist wolf in the door would lead to things like DEI or quotas and rules on your awards that limits things like creativity, which in turn leads to things like subverting and vandalizing beloved properties that used to make you money. And I seem to recall millions of people pointing out that maybe it's not the best idea to root on things like authoritarianism, especially when people just wanted to go to work and save their homes.
No, screw your freedom.
Wear a mask, social distance. If you can't do that, I don't have much respect for you.
And yes, we are doing it maskless. Think of this as a movie set, an Oscars movie with a cast of over 200 nominees. So, just like on a movie set, when we're rolling, masks off.
And now we have Hollywood actors and writers concerned about losing their jobs and losing their homes. No, they really couldn't have written a better script. From the Hollywood Reporter, record number of Hollywood workers facing evictions, seeking rent assistance amid strikes. Actors, writers, and crew members are being hit by both the work stoppage and the end to the COVID tenant protections, as MPTF President Bob Beitcher says we're talking to people who are living in their cars and in some cases with their families. I think this is a good time to point out once again that Hollywood was considered essential by the state of California during COVID when millions of people, including my wife, were not. For those of you who are new to the channel, thanks to the COVID policies of Mayor London Breed of San Francisco and Governor Gavin Newsom of California, my wife was forced to shut down her very successful salon of 15 years forever. Anyway, back to the article. 4 months into the writer's strike and almost 2 months into the Film Actors Guild strike, the fear of industry workers losing their apartments and homes due to the work stoppage has become an increasingly looming threat. A work stoppage that both the Writers Guild of America and the Film Actors Guild voted to approve. In July, Deadline published a story with quotes from an anonymous studio exec saying the game plan was to let strikes drag on until union members were losing their housing. And at a recent event, entertainment community fundraiser Annette Benning confirmed that this is indeed happening. For many non-celebrity actors, the strikes have been financially ruinous. The strike has had a massive impact on my housing situation. I worked 1 day in May, and since then, all work has stopped. Actor David Bach told The Hollywood Reporter, "I've almost depleted my entire savings, and I haven't been able to pay my rent in the last few months. My building manager and property owners extended me a grace period due to the good social credit I have built up by doing some gardening and landscaping in our building's common area. Noble. However, in early August, I received an eviction notice from the building management company taped to my front door." Now, maybe David Bach forgot to mention it, or maybe he didn't want to mention it for the narrative, but I didn't hear anything about looking for another job or taking on some gig work like Uber Eats or Uber for a side hustle. Admitting it's downright humbling as an adult to come to find you've reached the limit of your own self-sufficiency and that it's time to ask for help. He applied to the Film Actors Guild Foundation's aid program and quickly received a check for the month's rent. Why do you need to apply? They're the ones who decide to go on strike, and a lot of their members need to pay rent and mortgages. You think the union would have had that all worked out since they're the ones who decided to go on strike, but quite frankly, I don't know how unions operate because in any of my previous careers, when I had a chance to join one, I didn't. For precisely these reasons. Listen, I want this guy to be able to pay his rent. I'm not rooting for the producers or the studios or the actors or the writers. I'm coming at this from a customer perspective. And I have to ask, is this all bullshit? We're not talking about an industry that's known for its candor. And despite the fact that the WGA and the Film Actors Guild are constantly talking about their unity and claiming they're just around the corner from total victory, we also have articles like this from the Hollywood Reporter. Majority of Americans support writers, actors over studios and strikes. Gallup poll finds union support remains high among Americans as more than 70% side with the writers. You don't say. That sounds impressive, doesn't it? Except when you hear this. The Gallup poll was conducted via telephone interviews in August with a random sample of just over 1,000 adults living in all 50 states and the District of Columbia. Well, I ran a little poll of my own on Twitter back on August 11th, and I asked, do you care about the Hollywood strike? 3.2% said yes, hurry back. 96.8% said no, stay on strike. By the way, that poll received 12,909 votes. And now the unions want to divide and conquer by trying to break up the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. And to be fair, the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers are trying to break up the unions, and I'm for all of them breaking up. Quite frankly, neither side has looked very good to this point, and the AMPTP, or the armpit as I like to call them, has also hired a prominent Washington, D.C. based crisis PR firm to help with its messaging, which hasn't been very good. By the way, that crisis PR firm also helped Washington, D.C. with its messaging during a certain pizza incident. And unwisely, the writers and actors decided to use the Star Trek franchise today to get their messaging out. Star Trek stars join the picket lines in Hollywood, and there we see George Takei, Mr. Day Rate Player himself, according to William Shatner, and Mr. Consequence Culture LeVar Burton. It's interesting they bring up Star Trek, the once storied franchise that was brought back and turned into repurposed garbage by Jar Jar Abrams and Alex Kurtzman, and when they accidentally made a good season of television with Terry Metalis' Picard Season 3, they decided to grab defeat out of the jaws of victory and follow it up with more garbage, making Kurtzman Trek one of the best examples of everything wrong with woke Hollywood.
You only calling us when you got your dramas. One of these days we'll repay you, we'll slay you. Come on, scream! What? What the f?
So despite all the rhetoric and the yammering, it kind of seems that the producers are getting exactly what they want. Force majeure is in full effect. From NBC News, Warner Brothers suspends deals with Mindy Kaling, the creator of the wildly unsuccessful Velma, and Jar Jar Abrams, the destroyer of franchises. Shows are being canceled like Amazon's The Peripheral, despite getting a second season. Now, to be fair, the only reason it got a second season was they didn't want to piss off Chris Nolan's brother. And the disastrous Disney Plus is using this opportunity to delay, hopefully indefinitely, shows like Echo and Agatha, whatever the hell it's called now, because it's gone through 3 title changes. But not to worry, ladies and gentlemen, we're still getting the Marvels in November. I said before this strike started, look for a lot of shows to be outright canceled or very quietly shelved indefinitely, and that's happening, and we've only just begun. As we have gone over extensively in my previous strike videos, Hollywood has finally been forced to look at some of the errors of their ways. Due to new technology, they are in the midst of a massive paradigm shift that they weren't ready for.
Every time the technology changes, there's a strike.
Yeah.
What I was saying, I think the other day, was that, that's the cards you're dealt. The technology has changed. You can't turn back the hands of time, as Cher said. Now, of course, the problem with the streaming is that 2 of the biggest media companies now, Amazon and Apple, they don't care about this stuff. It's a side gig.
Yeah.
It's just a flex to impress their girlfriends to have movie companies.
Bill Maher's an idiot, but he's right on this one. Streaming isn't going anywhere. You can't unmake the soup. And instead of being the great decentralization of Hollywood that it should have been, it's going to be the great contraction thanks to the strike. And thanks to a lot of government interference dating back to the 90s and the Clinton administration, it will only speed up the mergers, the consolidations, and be what the producers wanted this to be from the get-go, a purge. And all of this would have been hard enough to overcome for Hollywood, except for one thing that makes it 1,000 times worse: the culture war. Something the corporate media and the corporations will never mention. Not that they're not aware of it. No, au contraire, they're active participants. Social engineering, fortification, and forced behavior. Don't believe me?
You have to force behaviors. And if you don't force behaviors, whether it's gender or race or just any way you want to say the composition of your team, you're going to be impacted. And that's just not recruiting, it is development, as Ken said. And ultimately, it's still going to take time, but I am just as much shocked as Ken is that we have not seeing more opportunities, and we're going to have to force change.
That again was the head of BlackRock, who just so happens to own a sizable portion of stock in Apple, Disney, Google, Amazon, Netflix, Warner Brothers, Paramount. I could go on. And let's not forget Vanguard's in there too. And somehow Vanguard owns more BlackRock stock in BlackRock than BlackRock. And this is happening all through the entertainment industry, all through mainstream media, all through big tech, and all through our entire society. That's why giant corporations who are supposed to be in competition with each other all have very similar messaging, and that's why so many of our favorite properties are being reimagined for a modern audience. Woke Hollywood doesn't want to admit they're part of the social engineering and trying to push things like compelled speech, like with this pronoun garbage that my good friend Az just went through. The entertainment industry as a whole, and particularly corporate woke Hollywood, also doesn't mention the culture war because they never thought they would lose it. The culture war, or the pop culture war, is far from over, and no one said it would ever be easy, but we are gaining the upper hand. We are starting to win because they didn't think we'd do something like talk to each other. Me and a lot of my co-hosts from FNT have traveled across the country this year to do meetups to talk to our fellow members of the audience, and currently I'm in the UK doing just that. And the one thing I hear the most was, I thought I was alone. And as I've always said, this has always been bigger than Star Wars or Star Trek or Lord of the Rings. We've all noticed the degradation of our culture, and we were all told we were crazy for noticing it, and we were vilified for speaking out against it. Well, I'm here to tell you, you're not crazy and you're not alone. In the race to turn our escapism and our entertainment into a platform for influence, Hollywood ended up losing its relevance. Hollywood found out that they don't get to choose their audience, the audience chooses them. And people are sick of the ingratitude and the divisiveness, and they've gone from disappointed to angry, which are still forms of caring, to complete apathy. No one cares that you're on strike. It's the end of woke Hollywood as we know it, and we feel fine. Well, it turns out that the worst time strikes in history by the Writers Guild of America and the Film Actors Guild turned out not to be a good idea. And lo and behold, as predicted by your average audience member, it led to an industry's contraction, corporate mergers, and a lot of unemployment. So you would think after shutting down their industry for the second time in 4 years that Hollywood might dial down the divisiveness and politics despite entering election season. And what happened next was a surprise to absolutely no one, with the exception of the vast majority in Hollywood, including but not limited to the highly paid analysts who are supposed to see something like this coming: the great cultural shift.
I have to be honest, I was not very steeped in the comics.
I didn't read any comics or do any research.
I wasn't familiar with the comics. I wasn't familiar with the movies.
We didn't lean into a whole lot of the history of the comic books.
Yeah, candidly, we were not enormous comic fans.
I wasn't super into superhero comics when I was a kid. I read a lot of like indie press stuff.
First thing I was told is don't read the comics. Really?
As a creator, they put you in a bubble. They don't let you talk about any of the other projects, right?
You know, they're up for anything.
We ultimately decided to redefine it for the series and thought that it worked better for the story that we're trying to tell.
Did you ever read you never read the comic?
When the DVD comes out, I'm going to read a Thor comic book and just see where we went wrong.
One of these days.
You're a
After woke Hollywood had its worst year in 2023, it's staring down the barrel of a grim 2024. I know you just hate to see it. And that's largely due to the Writers Guild of America and the Film Actors Guild going on the worst time strike in history.
Yeah, listen. We f***ed up.
And the great Hollywood purge that they brought on is well underway. Just to name a few, recently there's been layoffs at Pixar, NBC Universal, the trillion-dollar company Amazon with Amazon Studios, and just announced today there'll be layoffs at Paramount. And this is only the beginning. The streaming bubble has burst, and the clear winner is the very same company the Film Actors Guild and the Writers Guild of America were calling the devil.
Netflix. Netflix. Fix. What the hell is the fix?
But while the strike and 1,000 other paper cuts help hasten the demise of woke Hollywood, it's not the main reason. So join me, you over 960,000 awakening wonders in the 40% who haven't subscribed yet, and let's talk about why Hollywood is failing. The devil's in the DEI. Sure, you've heard me and many others call out diversity, equity, and inclusion quite a bit, but who we haven't heard from a lot is any members from the Film Actors Guild or the WGA. And that's solely due to the fact that in the fun and games entertainment business, they live in fear. Fear of losing the few gigs they have left, and, this may shock you, they live in fear of their own union. But it's one thing to call out woke Hollywood in the safety of my spare bedroom in Texas, surrounded by my plastic pals, and it's another thing to hear it from people who actually work in the industry. It's no surprise that after the year of the flopbuster major layoffs and a devastating strike, people in the industry are starting to get really worried. Because it turns out not every member of the WGA is really happy with what's going on, especially since the strike ended with new rules being implemented. If you thought the new Oscar rules were bad, wait till you hear this. My good friends Chris Gore and Alan Ng at Film Threat have recently been flooded with emails from people who want to remain anonymous, who aren't exactly staunch conservatives, who I have seen worked on a lot of legit TV shows and won a lot of awards between them, are calling out the woke garbage.
Better late than never.
Why reach out to Film Threat? Well, because they have to. It's not like they can reach out to Deadline, Variety, The Hollywood Reporter, or Rolling Stone, who are all owned by the same company and in the pockets of the corporate studios. So let's do something different and hear from them. Again, these are members of the Writers Guild of America, along with other industry people with years of experience. I don't know, maybe reality hit for some of the WGA members when they were given this WGA Perspective Writers Search Form.
Oh boy, here we go.
Screenshots were provided from yet another anonymous WGA member of the WGA Perspective Writer Form, asking very personal questions like sexual identity. Are you heterosexual, asexual, bisexual, pansexual, gay, lesbian, queer, or unspecified? But there's more. How about gender identity? Female, transgender, male, non-binary, trans-feminine, trans-masculine, unspecified. Wouldn't that be non-binary?
This is all very confusing.
Then there's disability, autoimmune condition or chronic illness, blind or low vision. I'd qualify for that. Cognitive disorder. I'd definitely qualify for that. Deaf or hard of hearing, dwarfism, limb difference, mental disorder. Well, all of Hollywood would qualify for that. Mobility disability, neurodiverse, physical disfigurement, unspecified. Then there's a full ethnicity breakdown, and listen, I can save everyone a lot of time, money, and pixels on this form. All it needs to ask is, are you white, yes or no?
You are white! You shut the you are white! You white! He's white!
You know what they're not concerned with? POTs. People of talent. This WGA writer also adds, this may not be obvious at first glance. There sure seem to be a lot of white dudes at the Golden Globes, right? Well, this doesn't impact the top 2% of writers, showrunners, and directors, since they're in rarefied air when they get work no matter what. It's those of us with decades of experience working on your favorite TV shows and films that are now sitting on the sidelines waiting. No institute reinforces this more than the WGA. One glance at their monthly calendar of events shows a Latinx Writers Committee meeting, an LGBTQ+ Writers Committee meeting, a Committee of Black Writers meeting, a Middle Eastern Writers Committee meeting, a Women's Writers Committee meeting, and an Asian American Writers Committee meeting, to name just a few. This anonymous WGA member was so worried, they said, and I quote, "My email isn't real as I don't want to accidentally give up an IP address and end up on some modern blacklist." I have a few stories that illustrate the hostility to non-diverse writers that may be of interest. Tell me if you haven't heard this one before, by the way. Writers hired on comic book shows are told it's a positive that they are unfamiliar with the original comic book and are not a fan of the existing IP because they want to do a, quote, modern new take on the material relevant to today.
I feel like what we did well was, through the symbolism, harness the conversations that are happening in this country right now and gave ourselves a way to dramatize them. I'm gonna be real. We damn near had scenes in this thing with the Capitol attack.
And how many times has that worked with existing IPs over the last 7 or 8 years? I'll give you the answer. None. Writers are asked, A, why this story today? How is it relevant politically today to the existing narrative they're pushing on our culture? And B, why are you the person to tell it? Because I have talent and I wrote it. Is not a valid answer. What is a valid answer? Because I'm a member of this aggrieved group or class, and only we can tell our own story. With the obvious exception of all European lore, mythology, American history, European history, and Lord of the Rings, then there's a bias towards the 2 for or the 3 for hire. What the hell does that mean? He or she explains. Being gay, for example, isn't enough now. You have to be gay, African American, Latinx, undocumented, unhoused, differently abled. Then on the DEI scorecard, they have a 2 times or 3 times positive score for hire.
This sounds very gay.
It's rich that the WGA and the Film Actors Guild are the ones out there complaining the most about the corporatism in Hollywood, something that I generally agree with, except for the fact that the unions are pulling the same shit. And apparently there's been a saying going on for quite some time in Hollywood that stems from all the woke universities that parents waste their money on. The mantra is, male and pale is stale. Out with the old order and in with the new. Anyone who questions this new orthodoxy will, of course, be denounced as not promoting a diverse workspace or worse, racist, from an anonymous member of the Writers Guild of America. You're so right about the fear running this town, but this is the first time when I've been afraid to say anything about how DEI is being weaponized. I've been a liberal progressive my entire life, and a few of the Emmy-nominated shows I've worked on actively advance the causes being fought for. But now it's like I'm no longer wanted at the table, because you're not, solely because of my age, gender, and skin color. Shutting anyone out for any of those reasons doesn't feel like DEI, but more like its opposite.
Always be wary of any name that sounds like it could come out of a George Orwell book. That's never a good sign, because it sounds like, sure, diversity, equity, inclusion, these all sound like nice words. But what it really means is discrimination on the basis of race, sex, and sexual orientation, and it's against merit.
Well, if the E in the DEI was equality, that's what it would be. But instead, they replaced that word with equity.
No offense, but it sounds like some commie gobbledygook.
They're not looking for equality or even equity. What they're looking to do is fight discrimination with discrimination.
You can't be racist towards white people, Stan. They all honky bitches.
Thank you, black female Cartman. I sick corrected. I love it when I see diversity done right, not the forced or self-conscious way we're getting it on shows like Bridgerton that erase actual history and pretend black people were always members of the Royal Society.
We've gone from the rich diversity of the Abbey to a terribly white balcony. I'm very struck by that.
The anonymous WGA writer says I worked in rooms with very few minorities or women in them for at least half of my career. And that was f***ed up, but now it's starting to feel like a new paradigm isn't about equality or equity, because it isn't. It's about a complete reversal of the power dynamic. But until a few years ago, writers' rooms were getting more diverse every year I've been working in them, along with the rest of entertainment. Only now they're getting less diverse, and I think storytelling is suffering because of it. And in closing, he or she says, Norman Lear used to have Republican conservative writing in his rooms. Nowadays, that would be impossible.
I find that the umbilical, that the many umbilicals that connect my friends on the right, you referred to me as a liberal at the beginning. I shy from the word. I don't like the label, any kind of label. But right or left, I find that there are so many umbilicals that connect us that are so much stronger and so more numerous than the things that disconnect us. I'd like to see a little more stress on the former.
Let's go over a couple of more briefly from yet another anonymous WGA member who quite frankly, I can't say specifically, worked on some pretty legit shows and some not so legit shows. I was having a pretty great career with a few jobs on shows I'd rather not remember. That was right up until this DEI stuff took over. And then I stopped getting asked to join rooms run by white showrunners. They stopped being able to hire more than 1 or 2 other writers that looked like them.
When you try to move from where we are towards something which looks more nearly like equality, there are people who are doing quite nicely now who feel like something is being taken away from them.
In recent years, I know I lost gigs on shows that I would have been great for, shows where the showrunner wanted me, but where the corporate bosses nixed my hiring. And if you're wondering why all of these people are anonymous, every single one of them, well, here's the explanation again. But we're not allowed to say anything to anyone about any of this because of our gender and skin color. We no longer check the right boxes. It's like we're supposed to just shut up and go away. But I have a family to feed and I'm really good at my job. If any of this got out there, it could very easily end any hope I have of continuing to work in this business. But why do you want to work in this business? It sounds awful, and you say it yourself. But this gig has been devalued and demonetized, and streamers don't care. No, they don't. If they have to hire a new young staff every season, it's cheaper that way, and that's your secret of diversity. It's cheaper. Now, there's a lot more to this, and there will be a lot more coming out at filmthreat.com, so go check it out. But we'll end it with this one. Attached are the screen grabs from some of the various emails I received regarding self-identification surveys and member census. And the real kicker, Jedi training. You heard me right. From an illustrator at the Art Directors Guild, the ADG was sending these surveys out at an extremely aggressive level last year. There was also something they called Jedi training. Justice, equity, diversity, and inclusion. You gotta be f***ing kidding me. IATSE, the International Alliance of Theater and Stage Employees, ran a similar census that they said was voluntary, but was aggressive in members insisting they participate. Here's the deal, and forgive me for stating the obvious. Any job you're at where you don't feel you can speak your mind cordially or say basic stuff to your coworker or your boss is, and I'll use your language, the very definition of a toxic work environment. This doesn't help tell authentic stories. It's antithetical to that. It doesn't breed creativity. It spawns division. Listen, any ideology that cannot build anything on its own, it's based in subversion, requires its practitioners to be deceptive or disingenuous, or worse, lie, cheat, and steal, and then instill fear in anyone who wants to call it out, isn't a good ideology. Yet the cancer that is identity politics is pushed equally by the corpos, the unions, and the access media. And it's pushing away the thing that Hollywood just completely forgot it needed: customers. Ticket sales, meaning actual tickets sold, are down almost 40%, and the entire establishment Hollywood ecosystem is falling apart, with the aforementioned year of the flopbuster, massive layoffs, and layoffs in digital media. Don't believe me? From Bloomberg. 2024 Hollywood predictions consolidate or crumble. After a quiet year for deals, media industry experts predict major companies will merge or shut down their streaming services. Then there's the poor theaters that woke Hollywood abandon again. This might help paint the picture from David Pollan's The Hot Button Substack. Here is a list of what 2023 looks like versus 2024 based on the wide releases 8 months on this list, meaning it only goes up to August. 6 different studios with the top release. That may be the most hopeful part. January 2023, there were 7 new wide releases. In 2024, there's going to be 6. February 2023, there were 10 wide releases. In February 2024, there's going to be 6. In March 2023, there were 10 new wide releases. In March 2024, there's going to be 5. April 2023, there were 14 wide releases. In April 2024, there's going to be 4. May 2023, there were 10 new wide releases. In May 2024, there's going to be 6. June 2023, the summer movie season, 9 new wide releases. June 2024, 5. The heart of the summer movie season, July of 2023, had 8 new wide releases. In July of 2024, there's only going to be 4. And in August, the dog days of summer 2023, 9 new wide releases. And in August 2024, there's only going to be 6. And of those 2024 wide releases, only 4 films aren't some sort of a prequel or a sequel. To put this in perspective, in 2019 alone, Hollywood had $9 billion films. From 2020 to 2023, they've had 6. Now, I'm not celebrating anyone losing their jobs outside of the woke activists in all of entertainment and the access media, and hell, let's throw in the LA Times, because they all played their part. What was the woke Hollywood saying for cancel culture? Oh, that's right, consequence culture.
In terms of cancel culture, I think it's misnamed. That's a misnomer. I think we have a consequence culture, and that consequences are finally encompassing everybody in the society, whereas they haven't been ever in this country. So I think that there are good signs that are happening in the culture right now, and I think it has everything to do with a new awareness on people who were simply unaware of the real nature of life in this country for people who have been othered since this nation began.
You are looking at your great-great-grandfather, James Henry Dixon. So you have an ancestor who served with the Confederacy.
Are you kidding me?
That's true.
I'd have fought you 5 minutes ago if you told me that I had a white great-great-grandfather.
You can fight me, but it's the truth. And ain't nothing you can do about it.
The Flopbusters, the worst time strike in history, the streaming bubble bursting, and all the layoffs stem from the previous years of political divisiveness, and now we're heading into the mother of all divisive political years. And I highly doubt the adult pretenders and the people who help adults pretend are going to be able to keep their mouths shut. We are well past the around portion of this story and well into the find out final act. And as woke Hollywood enters the long, dark power lunch of the soul, they better think about one thing. Do they want to survive? And if you do, there's one simple term that you just need to internalize. Shut up and entertain.
Hi, you guys. Hi, Avengers.
Hey,
Scarlett.
As a celebrity, I know all about stuff.
I think Kamala Harris needs a catchphrase.
Like science and politics.
They don't really respect you. They laugh at you behind your back. They think you're stupid.
So trust me when I tell you who you should vote for.
Kamala Harris will protect your right to disagree with her.
If you don't vote the right way, it's like a hate crime. It makes me sad and angry, and I'll leave the country. And you don't want that.
Listen, do you smell something? That's the breaking winds of change in Hollywood. And as Tinseltown looks down at the fiery but mostly peaceful disaster of their own making, I'm reminded it's been 4 years since Hollywood's first shutdown, where in truth, they were deemed essential over millions of their fellow Californians and allowed to work. And they used that time to make a lot of bad films and streaming content, root on the riots from the comfort of their $6 million mansion, saying things like enough white comfort, and no Jar Jar Abrams, I'm not gonna let that one go. They complained about a president who wasn't in office for 4 years. The entire industry became the mouthpiece of Pfizer, shaming people over the jab and generally alienating half the country.
Screw your freedom.
And it all might have worked out for them. Unfortunately, all of those non-essential people are the ones who actually buy tickets. Then sometime later, they decided to follow that up with a strike, shutting down their industry for the second time in 4 years. I seem to recall a precious few people within your industry and a hell of a lot of people outside it, including some guys and gals recording videos in their spare bedrooms, warning you that this might not be a good idea. And now that we're a year past the end of the strike, it turns out it wasn't a good idea.
Who could have seen this coming?
Ultimately, it wasn't a smart move as a writer to go on strike asking for more money during the year of the Flopbuster. Turns out it was ill-advised to vote to stop working after the streaming bubble burst. Turns out it was flat out stupid to go on strike after an entire industry broke its business model. Ticket sales in theaters are down 30 to 40%, and the core of your industry, the legacy Hollywood Hollywood studios are largely in debt. And while all this was going on, adult pretenders in Hollywood found new and unique ways to drive off the paying customer. That reminds me, a lot of us were saying just because Hollywood stops doesn't mean the world does, and the worst case scenario actually happened. That audience you've been alienating has become the competition. I also seem to recall a few of us stating that this strike would end up being a purge, leading to mergers, acquisitions, outsourcing, layoffs, and shrinkage.
I was in the pool!
And now we're in a timeline where I agree with John Campea.
The gravestone will say, "Here lies the movie-going industry, death by suicide." Because they're fucking killing themselves.
And while John and I will vehemently disagree on what led up to Tinseltown's self-deletion, it doesn't change the fact that Hollywood is fleeing woke Hollywood in droves. And you don't have to take my word for it. These are Access Media headlines from just the last month. Why Los Angeles is becoming a production graveyard. LA production plunged 20% in 2023, new film LA report finds. Why streaming content could be Hollywood's final act. Hollywood is dead, according to Justine Bateman. Here's what comes next. Bateman argues the emotional and financial scaffolding necessary to support film business is gone. In its place, we have something of a conveyor belt churning out content. You know, Hollywood running to the guy who created the business environment that theirs is failing in is probably not the best strategy. Aside from the fact that it's going to be a tough sell even to the general populace of California, considering all their problems, to subsidize professional make-believe. The question is, what rules are these subsidies and tax credits going to come with? Well, that was already answered a year ago. From March 1st of last year, California's film tax credit aims to punish projects that don't hit diversity goals. And there it is, the underlying foundation of many of Hollywood's current problems, something the Access Media won't mention, but I will. Their slavish adherence to the message, imposing written and unwritten rules on themselves in the name of diversity, which is truly just exclusion, and it's antithetical to all creativity. Turning an industry that used to produce some pretty good stuff that would occasionally entertain you and make you think into a platform for propaganda and content, particularly with pop culture and genre, permeated with people telling you what to think, although their attitude will be,
"We're not telling people what to think. We're just trying to show them how."
And now Hollywood finds themselves in a bit of a pickle after going through all that strife. They come out the other end on an election year. And the question I had earlier in the year was, would Hollywood sit this one out, considering all the overall damage to their brand? I was getting concerned that we wouldn't get a cringe-inducing adult pretender video. Better late than never.
Hi, you guys. Hi, Avengers.
Hi.
Thanks
Hey,
for
Scarlett.
jumping on the call.
Whoa. I think you mean assembling.
Yeah, how can we be of service?
Well, how about we start with what our voting plans are going to be, who we're going to bring to the polls with us, that sort of thing.
I think Kamala Harris needs a catchphrase.
Ooh, yes, definitely a catchphrase.
How about this? I'm just off the top of my head. I can do this all day.
Shut up.
I hate it. Okay.
How about I'm down with democracy? It's just clean, it's simple.
Okay, I like that.
It's hard to argue with that.
Kamala Harris down with democracy.
I don't know if that sounds the way we want it to sound, though.
I think we just need, can we get some production, though?
Jarvis? My name's not Jarvis, but whatever.
I'm Kamala Harris, and I am down with democracy.
You know, nothing says reaching out and connecting with the common man like an adult pretender who is essentially a professional liar who reads and interprets other people's words for a living, coming down from their ivory towers to read and interpret a poorly written script to tell you how to vote in a badly edited Zoom video. I'd also like to point out that they went to the OG team. You don't see any new Avengers in that video. Where's Simu Liu? Where's Brie Larson? And prior to that, the Batman himself, Michael Keaton, came out with this banger.
You know, for some of you folks who, guys mostly, I guess, who are thinking about attending a rally with Musk and Trump, they don't really respect you. They laugh at you behind your back. They think you're stupid. They don't want to hang out with you. They have nothing in common with you. They're not your bros. They have no respect for you. Trust me.
Let me get this straight. An adult pretender is telling us not to vote for somebody because they wouldn't hang out with us and they think we're stupid, coming from a guy who wouldn't give us the time of day and thinks we're stupid. And then there's Harrison Ford.
The truth is this. Kamala Harris will I don't care.
And if you ever wonder what killed the movie star, well, thanks to social media, we got to know them. The latest example of that, you probably didn't know, a Tom Hanks film flopped this weekend. But this is balanced out by the very controversial statements from Zachary Levi calling for balance.
I don't think it's accurate to say that somehow Hollywood is both a liberal and a conservative town. Back in the day, there might have been a bit more of a balance, you know, but you really have to be at a certain level of your career in order to get away with it, number one. But number two, that was also back then. And I think naming just Jon Voight and Dennis Quaid, of the thousands of actors in Hollywood that you could only name two, I think actually speaks to that. And what that means is there's plenty, and by the way, they have sent me lots of messages, plenty of people in my industry, in Hollywood, that are terrified to publicly say that they would vote for Donald Trump or be conservative in any way. That's why you don't see them. That's why they're not very prevalent or prominent, because they know that there's ramifications for this kind of shit. Y'all, our industry is gonna be fucking gonzo. Like, it already is. We're getting eroded. The pandemic and the strikes and all of these things, they've already eroded it so much. My cry to all of you out there, you closeted conservatives, closeted Trump voters, y'all, it's now or never. If what you're afraid of is somehow the backlash of an industry that's not going to exist very soon, don't let that hold you back.
Fully acknowledging Zachary Levi coming out and making this statement is far more ballsy than any of his comrades in Hollywood, we have to remember that the celebrity endorsement is not going to stop. I find it far more disturbing that it would actually sway a vote. And I think the biggest takeaway is what he said towards the end. If you work in Hollywood, don't concern yourself with the backlash of an industry that's not going to exist. And again, this isn't just some hyperbole coming from YouTube or social media. This is coming from within the industry. Sony Pictures Entertainment CEO Tony Vinciquerra warned that the deals made with major labor unions are suppressing domestic production. The contract terms are forcing productions out of the US now. The air has come out of the content bubble, says Matthew Bellani, founder of entertainment industry title Puck News. Crisis is a good word. I try not to be alarmist, but crisis is what people are feeling. And many of us said that the hardest hit during the strikes would be the working class in Hollywood, and that's exactly what happened. The losers, Film LA noted, are rank-and-file industry workers, according to the 2024 Otis College report on the creative economy. 27% of the nation's domestic film and TV workforce resides in Greater Los Angeles. Given these workers heavy dependence on local filmmaking, reduced project output raises significant concerns. And I think this one almost sums it up. Other Hollywood vets lament that LA is simply no longer a film-friendly hub. I would argue that LA is no longer a human-friendly hub. It's not any one thing, it's death by 1,000 cuts. Speaking of that, let's get to my wheelhouse and talk about some genre entertainment, because that's where a lot of those cuts come from. Hollywood has already destroyed the money-printing machines that were Star Wars, Star Trek, and Doctor Who, just to name a few, and they're well on their way to doing it with the superhero film. Like I said, over the past month, we've gotten a litany of soul-searching or navel-gazing articles about the destruction of Hollywood from the access media, and this is one of them. Superhero burnout. With most superhero movies flopping, can Marvel and DC's 2025 slate reverse the unprecedented box office drought? And this brings up the dreaded superhero fatigue, which is a bit of a chicken or the egg argument. Will people still be drawn to a superhero TV show or movie that's well made? Yes. Are too many poorly made superhero TV shows and films going to hurt Hollywood's bottom line as a market driver? Yes. Between 2015 and 2019, 25 out of the 30 superhero titles, 83%, took in more than $500 million worldwide. After the pandemic, the dynamic has flipped on its head. Since 2022, 10 of the 17 superhero titles, 59%, have made less than $500 million. And the rest of the article is essentially going over the things that we've mentioned here on this channel for years. DC is essentially rebooting for the third time in a decade. Sony making Spider-Man movies without Spider-Man is stupid, and Marvel is oversaturated with crap. Sony's two films this year, Madam Web and Venom, were at least unintentionally hilarious. DC's had 6 flops in a row going back to last year, and after multiple underperforming TV shows and films and outright flops, Marvel finally got a hit with Deadpool and Wolverine. And their upcoming slate in 2025, outside of Daredevil, looks at best highly questionable and at worst abysmal. And it looks like the future of the superhero film hinges on 2 films that release in July of 2025, Superman and the Fantastic Four. There are no slam dunks here, says exhibitor relations analyst Jeff Bach. There's still a lot of goodwill for Marvel, is there? It's the biggest show in town, but to think that these are going to do Deadpool and Wolverine business, I don't see any of that for these films. No, I don't think a Captain America sequel without Captain America and a Thunderbolts film without any of the original Thunderbolts from the comics combined are going to get close to Deadpool and Wolverine. I will give credit to DC and Disney Marvel, at least they're trying to change. That being said, I'm far more hopeful for a James Gunn Superman over a Pedro Pascal Reed Richards and a female Silver Surfer. Hollywood loves and hates the superhero film, but much to their chagrin, it's not going anywhere because they don't have anything else. Still, Warner Brothers and Disney remain steadfastly committed to their respective DC and Marvel slates well into the decade, and that doesn't look like it will change anytime soon. There still isn't anything to replace superheroes at the box office in terms of films with the potential to make the amount of money. Box says, until we see some genre take over, they're going to continue to invest in it. Nothing says innovation like waiting around for something to happen. The funniest bit, though, is this article from Variety was preceded by this article just 3 weeks prior. Toxic fandom, how Hollywood is battling fans who are just out for blood, from social media boot camps to super fan focus groups. To anyone who makes decisions in Hollywood who may come across this video, if you're wondering what led to superhero fatigue, which is better described as Hollywood fatigue, and that death by 1,000 paper cuts, which includes one gaping mortal wound, the problem has been, and always will be, you. Hell, you guys just put out a movie, Joker 2, that literally told the audience to fuck off, and they did. And they felt like you've been saying that for quite some time, and instead of possibly listening to your paying customer, you decided to make him and her the enemy. To paraphrase a quote from my good friend Chris Gore, demonizing fandom will turn out to be the costliest mistake in Hollywood history. And you will have to ask yourself collectively as an industry, how in the hell did a few people in their spare bedrooms, people posting on Twitter and Facebook and other social media accounts, know a lot more than your highly paid market analysts? Now, the industry might not want to hear this, but quite frankly, the best stuff is coming out on streaming, and I think Hollywood could fix most of their problems, save for one. Despite having everything you wanted for the last 4 years, your industry has failed, and it's because you fucked with the money. So how do you reconnect with the audience when they're walking away silently, or worse yet, becoming the competition? And no matter what happens this year, you will be forced to do something that, unfortunately, thanks to your corporate structure, you won't be able to do fast enough. Change. But it's undeniable at this point that Tinseltown is broken up, and Hollywood is fleeing woke Hollywood in droves, and that's a good thing.
Well, let's be honest, it was a terrible night last night. It was a terrible night for women, for children, for the hundreds of thousands of hardworking immigrants who make this country go.
So you little Trumpets, like, y'all won. I know you're happy, whatever the nobody acting like bitter losers. However, y'all need to leave me the alone.
We got our asses kicked. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger.
All day yesterday, I was walking around proudly wearing my I voted sticker. Today, I wore my I am questioning my fundamental belief in the goodness of humanity sticker.
On Tuesday, Americans went to the polls and elected Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States.
The results were shocking and even horrifying.
It was a terrible night for everyone who voted against him, and guess what? It was a bad night for everyone who voted for him, too. You just don't realize it yet.
Well, guys, last night, America decided to get back with their crazy ex and elect Donald Trump as the 47th President of the United States.
No matter what's happening in the political climate, I will always be there for my community and will always try to help organize and uplift one another because it is scary out there.
In this democracy, the majority has spoken, and they said they don't care that much about democracy.
You get nothing. You lose. Good day, sir.
I hope you've had a good week, because I have. But you know who hasn't, and you just hate to see it? The millionaires and billionaires of Tinseltown. Considering they alienated half the country and broke their entire business model, leading to the death of broadcast television, which led to the death of late night and their ilk in the legacy media, the death of the access media, it makes it very hard for them to pretend or go to parties, especially when their favorite host is locked up. And that's before the events of the last week, and it turns out that streaming wasn't the only bubble to burst, because the Hollywood bubble burst, one that was primarily fueled by a constant supply of their own farts. And now they find themselves in an existential crisis, which has been unintentionally the most entertaining thing they've produced in years.
Tommy, you want to give us the word of the day?
I would indeed. The word of the day is
Schadenfreude, pleasure derived by someone from another person's or entire industry's misfortune. Now, some of you out there might say that that sounds a little mean, and you'd be right. I completely understand that not everyone in Hollywood likes the direction their industry is going, and it's also not fair to just single out Hollywood. I'm talking about the entire corporate legacy media complex. From the film industry to publishing to the comic book industry to the music industry to that legacy broadcast media that shovels crap down our throats in every airport and gym. And no, I sure as hell don't watch that stuff at home. So you can't blame the average American or world citizen for walking around with a song in their heart and a smile on their face, enjoying the hell out of the glorious meltdowns coming particularly from Tinseltown. But every defeat is an opportunity, and hey, let's use Hollywood's language here. This can be a teachable moment, because Hollywood, this is why you lose.
Let's talk about being queer in America post-election. How are you feeling?
Feeling not great, but also hopeful, knowing that I have our community. I feel more invigorated than ever to be surrounded and uplift my community. No matter what's happening in the political climate, I will always be there for my community and will always try to help organize and uplift one another, because it is scary out there. And we need hope, and hope is the most important thing. And we will survive. We will get through this, even though it's very scary. Community, and community.
Adult pretenders. This is why you lose.
Come on, go vote blue. And if you disagree with this sentiment, just hit the unfollow button. I don't need your business.
If you don't like it, don't watch it. Peace.
Corporate legacy broadcast media. This is why you lose.
I worry about my children's future, especially my daughter, who now has less rights than I have.
I worked hard as hell to elect the first Black Asian woman president.
We are the only 248-year-old multiracial, pluralistic democracy in the world. And shall we keep it? A lot of our fellow Americans say we shouldn't. Now we know. Now we know for sure.
Late night television. This is why you lost.
On Tuesday, Americans went to the polls and elected Donald Trump to be the next president of the United States.
The results were shocking and even horrifying.
Donald Trump, who tried to forcibly overturn the results of the last election, was returned to office by an overwhelming majority.
This is the same Donald Trump who openly called for vengeance against his political enemies.
And now, thanks to the Supreme Court, there are no guardrails.
Nothing to protect the people who are brave enough to speak out against him.
Oh, shut up, woman.
And to the access media. This is why you lose. Stop blaming celebrity endorsements for Kamala Harris's loss. We need to hear from artists now more than ever. Now, I know there are thousands of examples of the access media losing, but for the sake of your time, your sanity, and mine, let's just go with the latest. And let's keep in mind this comes from Variety, the very same outlet that recently took a shot at Star Wars fans during The Acolyte, and just a month ago took a shot at all of fandom. But you got to give it up to Chris Willem and Variety. At least they're consistent. This time, they're going after the majority of Americans. How dare you question millionaire celebrities? Did you know that Bruce Springsteen, who sucks, and Beyonce, who also sucks, lost the election for Kamala Harris, or at least bear a large part of the responsibility for her party's failure at the polls this year? It's true, you know, at least if you listen to some of the punditry coming from conservatives and even from some Democratic operatives eager to find some celebs to push into the middle for their current circular firing squad. At this point, I think it'd be prudent to point out that it was George Clooney who, according to Quentin Tarantino, is not a movie star, and I would agree was the one who penned a letter that got the big guy to step down. And now he's catching some heat and you just hate to see it. But it is clear that the celebrity still has some influence over the ruling political class, just not their bosses, the American people. But Chris Willem and Variety think different. This isn't much of an exaggeration of some of the post-election sniping out there. A-list celebrity endorsements boomerang on Harris Democrats, read the headline of a reported news story in The Hill on Saturday. Overseas, The Guardian ran a Wednesday morning quarterback piece titled, "Did Celebrity Endorsements Actually Harm Kamala Harris?" The answer is yes, but let's hear what Chris has to say. Some right-leaning publications actually declared that the whole idea of artists and entertainers speaking up had suddenly just been killed in its tracks, because it has. Kamala Harris and the death of the celebrity endorsement, read the headline in The Spectator in the UK, echoed by an equally breathless piece in the New York Post titled, "How Kamala Harris Killed the Celebrity Endorsement. Parading A-listers over policies was always a recipe for disaster. Where's the lie? Musicians and actors in their ilk had a marvelous time ruining everything in this election cycle, to quote one of the most famous of these endorsers, more succinctly, to the tune of Blame Canada, Blame Hollywood. That's a good idea. Someone should get on it." And here comes the cope and resentment, and that resentment is largely towards you and I, the paying customers, something these outlets thoroughly loathe but still want you to subscribe to their crap websites and click on their ads. There's a good reason to believe the argument that people in the arts and entertainment terms we will use very loosely speaking up does not move the needle a tremendous amount, because it doesn't. But concurrent with that argument is the reasonable belief that they can move it at least a tiny amount in registrations and motivation, if not 180-degree turns. Dude, I say this for your own safety. Remove your nose from your sphincter. All right, let's hear the rest of his argument. Maybe he's got a point, maybe he doesn't. The idea that entertainers and artists, again a term we will use very loosely, involvement somehow leads to actual voter dissuasion is a fantasy. Bullshit that is happily perpetrated by the go woke, go broke crowd and picked up by columnists who think that picking on limousine liberals never goes out of style. It really doesn't, and no, it doesn't. It's tons of fun. It's just disappointing to see this picked up by objective journalists, by some Democrats themselves who imagine they have practical reasons to tell the entertainment world to shut up and sing, or shut up and act, or just shut up. I said it before, I'll say it again. The last few years have been very hard on Hollywood, and the last thing they needed was to come out the other end on an election year, but here we are. But I do have to agree with this article on one thing. Hollywood did hold back for quite a while, but they more than made up for it in the last couple of weeks. Now, according to the article's author, music journalist Chris Willman, the celebrity endorsement doesn't necessarily move the needle, except when it does, but it definitely doesn't dissuade any voters.
Sure, Jan.
And this argument probably works on Chris Willman and his ilk in Hollywood. Unfortunately, there's this pesky little thing called reality, considering the amount of celebrity endorsements there were. And considering how badly the industrial legacy corporate media complex got its ass kicked, you think it might be prudent for an industry that relies on the American people to just walk off quietly and take the L on this one, but thankfully you're not, because the access media can't die fast enough. Whether it has any effect or not, again, it did, just not the one you like. Everyone has to answer the question for themselves, if not their children. What did you do in the war, Daddy? Imagine feeling, as Bruce Springsteen, who sucks, did, that Donald Trump is the most dangerous candidate for president in my lifetime, even though he was already president for 4 years, and then stifling that because of what the New York Post or the twits on Elon Musk's platform might write. And it's statements like that that perpetuate fear and division are precisely the reasons you lost and you will continue losing in the corporate media. And all you are now is the dinosaurs mocking the meteor. And that meteor is us. That's why Elon can feel free to be a twit on his own platform and state, "We are the media now." The era of the woke mind virus, identity politics, and the message is over, whether you like it or not. You had a good run, but now life is going to go on without you much sooner than you think.
In the end, the universe tends to unfold as it should.
Americans are very uninformed about reality, what's really going on.
I hate you for voting for him, for not having an intelligence.
Americans who don't travel, who 80% don't have a passport, who are uneducated, are in their extraordinary naivete.
In the grander scheme of things, who cares if I lose a part of the movie because I hate the orange atrocity?
We f***ed up.
What a difference a day makes. On one particular November 5th in 2024, Hollywood and the greater entertainment industry did not have an awakening. What they did have was a realization that they can no longer lie to themselves or to you anymore. For 8 years now, woke Hollywood has seen themselves as the pop culture resistance. Not really sure how you rationalize raging for the machine as a resistance, but they found a way. Far be it for me to point out that Hollywood's based in California, and they have been in lockstep with damn near every corporation, which includes every power structure involved with entertainment and information, which has been in lockstep with the state. I mean, your guy has been in office the last 4 years. Hollywood literally had everything they wanted, and now they're left wondering what the hell happened. Since that long overdue crash of the woke market on that fateful November 5th, I expected some things to change with the obvious cultural shift, but now I'm starting to get whiplash. From Jeff Bezos wanting the Washington Post to be more balanced now, or Mark Zuckerberg and his apologies, or the LA Times wanting to be more balanced. I mean, what the hell's going on? Slow down. I can only take so many victory laps. We all know that's not true. So let's take another. Here are some fun headlines just from the last week and a half. Former Bond girl Gemma Arterton says female 007 would be too outrageous. Sometimes you just have to respect the tradition. An obvious common sense statement that shouldn't be controversial at all, although it would have been considered a hate crime 2 years ago on Jack Dorsey's Twitter, and it might still be in the UK right now. Or from The Telegraph, Hollywood's great unwokening has been unleashed. Or from Deadline, Disney pulls transgender storyline from Win or Lose Pixar series. What?
But wait! There's more!
And believe me, we'll get to that. And I can hear you asking, what could be crazier than Disney pulling a transgender story out of a kid's show? How about the New York Times calling out woke Hollywood? That's right, the New York Times is calling out woke Hollywood, and they use some talking points that you may find familiar. Is the awkward diversity era of Hollywood behind us? No, I'm not tired of winning. Hollywood has its eras, often apparent only in retrospect. Well, maybe for you and your lot in the corporate legacy media, but for a vast majority of the general audience, no, we noticed a long time ago. There I go, I'm not even one sentence in, and I want to enjoy this, so let's hear them out. Think back several years. Do you remember packed theaters giving Black Power salutes at screenings of Black Panther? No, I remember Wakanda Forever salutes. Do you remember when an all-female version of the Ghostbusters was treated as pioneering development? Do you remember when the writer of a Star Wars film named Gary Whitta described the Empire as a white supremacist human organization after Donald Trump's 2016 election? Has enough time now passed to say that this was all a bit strange? Strange isn't the word I'd use. Maybe deliberate? No, doesn't describe enough. Maybe counterintuitive? We're getting a little closer. Divisive? Yes. Subversive? Sure. Oh, I got it. Retarded. Looking back, you can see a period when identitarian politics were in cultural ascendancy. No, you only thought they were. And then the article lists the myriad of problems that led up to this disastrous era, which has thankfully ended, including but not limited to Harvey Weinstein and Me Too, Oscars So White, The Summer of Love. What it fails to mention is how much Hollywood rooted on The Summer of Love, or rooted on authoritarianism, or the real pandemic, incurable TDS. Hollywood vowed to change their ways and atone for the past, but what was particular to this Hollywood of the 2010s was the way that these politics fused with the industry's insatiable demand for sequels, spin-offs, and reboots, giving us a curious and mercenary new invention, the inclusive multi-million-dollar blockbuster, or the BIPOC buster, if you will. It's the same old thing, but with a bold and visionary new twist. Fewer white guys. Oh good, the New York Times has now determined that it's completely safe to say an obvious statement like, diversity just means less white. Now the article tries to argue that this era, which is almost a decade long, is akin to a genre or a subgenre like action movies in the 80s or the Western. So does the New York Times consider propaganda a genre now? But the article does make a very good point. When you use current year messaging in, for example, Star Wars or Star Trek, you're taking something that's been around for decades, that was timeless, and dating it. Is that what watching Barbie might feel like in 10 years? Yes. The patriarchy feels like a clearly of-the-moment choice for a big bad. The tropes of the passing era are as familiar and as easily spotted as with older periods. There is, for one thing, the showy, self-satisfied gender swapping, as with the 2016 election year reboot of the Ghostbusters.
What did you say?
I know this is crazy, right? But before you think the New York Times has found common sense, they remembered the New York Times. The movie prompted enough openly misogynistic and racist backlash to make it look like as if it was a noble endeavor, as if Hollywood executives who got reactionaries frothing at the mouth must be accomplishing something important, even if all they did was tweak the balance of characters in a dusty franchise. Well, that's undeniable now, but an argument could be made is Ghostbusters 2016 made it a dusty franchise. Then the article states Hollywood was right. The audiences were hungry for different stories. No, they're hungry for good ones, which, to be fair, in this current era when we occasionally get one that is different. Then there are the paper-thin diverse characters parachuted into major films, put front and center on every poster. I mean, except for shrinking Finn on the Force Awakens poster for China and covering up Chadwick Boseman's face on the Black Panther poster for China, or turning Halle Bailey blue on the Little Mermaid poster for China. But as the New York Times points out, these diverse actors are given curiously little to do as the plot unfolds. Brie Larson's Captain Marvel was set up as the most powerful superhero in the Marvel Universe, but ended up playing no decisive role in its most important films. And that was the last moment of clarity Disney Marvel had for a few years. While Captain Marvel's appearance in Endgame didn't affect the bottom line, it was certainly a precursor of things to come. And the rest was herstory. Captain Marvel was later joined by a black woman and a Muslim woman in the sequel The Marvels, in another series of firsts, but still a throwaway film. I wouldn't call a movie with an estimated budget of between $270 million and $378.5 million throwaway.
Black girl magic!
But I guess it's good that the New York Times and their ilk in the corporate dinosaur legacy media are starting to realize that Hollywood doesn't really care about your identity. They're just there to exploit it. Because it turns out there wasn't just a mandate on casting diverse actors. They also cast directors, producers, and writers. So is the corporate dinosaur legacy media having an awakening about this? Or are they full of shit? More on that later. Other films tried to correct the past, judging their original white male protagonists far more harshly than anyone in the audience did. At this point, I have to remind you once again that this is the New York Times, and they're absolutely right. And there are dozens of examples, including The Last Jedi, Indiana Jones, Star Trek, Doctor Who, but I like the one they bring up, James Bond. In the final James Bond film from Daniel Craig, No Time to Die, Bond has been replaced as Agent 007 by a black woman, played by Lasagna Lynch. Can you remember her name or her drink of choice? No, I can barely remember her face. He obsesses over girlfriends, dead and alive. He is unable to seduce. A much younger Ana de Armas laughs off the thought. By the end, you're just happy that this poor man, now totally out of time, has been put out of his misery. I think this is a good time to point out that if any of these talking points sound like they came from, for example, The Critical Drinker or Chris Gore at Film Thread, or hell, even yours truly, it's because they did. It seems that the New York Times is willing to admit that trying to appease the gods of modernity is the easiest way to date your film or TV show. The old Bond films are distinctly of their era, but they feel timeless. Why? Because they're fun. What's surprising is how quickly No Time to Die and James Bond, in its desperation to be modern, has become to feel dated. Listen, I'm not the kind of guy who says, I told you so, but cue Razor Fist.
Fuck you, I was right! Fuck you, I was right!
Now the New York Times wants to go back to the whole woke era of Hollywood being some crazy genre. Hollywood is no less dependent than before on its original lore. It's aliens and Star Wars and Missions Impossible, recycled over and over again to keep us entertained. This industry tried to update these formulas with new faces, but many of its efforts felt dutiful, insincere, too earnest, and self-satisfied. And I've got nothing snarky to say. I completely agree with that. Say what you want about the flaws of Schwarzenegger's or Sergio Leone's oeuvres. Like what? They're masterpieces? Listen, despite Schwarzenegger saying screw your freedom, and screw him, by the way, don't you dare compare 80s action films and Sergio Leone's westerns to fucking woke Hollywood. Anyway, back to the New York Times. Despite making a very bad analogy, they are leading to a good point, but they have survived changing times because they are fun. Something the PC blockbuster rarely had going for it. Again, does any of this sound familiar? It's conceivable that the close of this era will involve Hollywood's backsliding away from any inclusion in films. That Shang-Chi was the last Asian hero, by the way, Simu Liu is not a movie star, and that we will return to Tom Cruise flying in to save the day. First off, it's not too late to recast Simu Liu, who is 1,000 times worse than Brie Larson. And second, this brings us to the takeaway line from this entire article, a rare moment of authenticity from the New York Times. At least we no longer have to pretend to like something because it has the right politics, or because the people most vocally against it are Nazis. New York Times and everybody else in the dinosaur legacy media, thank you for your honesty, I guess, but you can't call this an awakening when you just admitted you've been full of shit the entire time. And by the way, we all knew it. Man, they're having a tough time and I'm here for it, and it doesn't end there. From The Telegraph, Hollywood's great unwokening has been unleashed.
We're in a different era. Get over it. Whoa!
The last time the U.S. elected a certain Ron Sealed, what the hell's that? Is that some sort of British thing? The last time the U.S. elected Donald Trump, Hollywood overtly sided against him, styling itself as the pop culture wing of the resistance. I think it would be prudent to point out that there are still people to this very day who claim this didn't happen. A fat lot of good it did. Popular studio franchises grew shrill and hectoring, and the publicity tours to promote them even more so, giving the populace an easily mockable enemy against which to rally. Yes, it was low-hanging fruit and it was delicious. As for audiences in Europe and elsewhere, we found ourselves caught in the middle of a national domestic in which ideological point scoring took precedence no matter how witless or cheap. And here's the best bit. Loath as I am to give the W word an airing, there's no avoiding it. 2024 was the year in which Hollywood began to move to its post-woke era. Have you had enough winning yet? No? Let's continue. From Vanity Fair, Hollywood's DEI programs have begun to die. How hard did the industry really try? I knew not to expect much, says one TV creator, but it's still pretty disheartening when even the facade totally falls away. Not to everyone. And that's where the goalposts are moving, by the way, that Hollywood didn't try hard enough, which is utter horseshit. But here's the good bit. I've heard people in Hollywood are very cautious about potential lawsuits that could arise from perceived quota systems. There are even some concerns about people's titles having equity in them. And I think you should be concerned because it turns out you can't fight discrimination with discrimination. But I've saved the best for last from The Hollywood Reporter. Disney pulls transgender storyline from Pixar's Win or Lose streaming series exclusive. What is happening? A spokesperson for Disney confirmed that the story arc was removed and provided the following statement to The Hollywood Reporter. When it comes to animated content for a younger audience, we recognize that many parents would prefer to discuss certain subjects with their children on their own terms and timeline. A very common sense and obvious statement from Disney that they should have probably run with a few years ago. Let me follow this up with an obvious statement of my own. What the hell was that storyline doing in a kid's show in the first place? And there's one more from The Hollywood Reporter again, Hollywood's biggest winners and losers of 2024. And we're just gonna focus on one loser, Disney Star Wars. Another Star Wars film pushed, another Star Wars trilogy announced. Does anybody think these announcements are real and not a money laundering scheme? Another Star Wars series that flopped. This one, $180 million. No, actually, the budget for The Acolyte was $230 million. And it generated massive controversy and fan division, some of which was super toxic, but also, how many times could Disney blame its audience for not liking what it makes? Apologies for all the reminders, but I do think it's necessary to point out that this is The Hollywood Reporter. The franchise's new kids show, Skeleton Crew, is getting good reviews for the first 2 episodes, so at least that's something. Too bad nobody's watching it. Part of the blowback against Lucasfilm boss Kathleen Kennedy is just people being jealous. Who doesn't want to be able to have projects repeatedly stumble and still keep one of Hollywood's top jobs? The rest of us can only dream of failing so successfully. Holy shit. I think Steve Bannon has infiltrated The Hollywood Reporter. Shots fired at Kathleen Kennedy. Hey, in her defense, you really have to try to fail this much. But to be fair, I can't put it all on the old girl because there is one other person out there trying to steal her crown of destruction. No, it's not Jar Jar Abrams. No, it's not Rianne Johnson. It's Mark Hamill, who seems to be having a really tough time right now.
I do feel it's an obligation. And who cares about your career? People say, oh, well, it's hurting your career because you have to appeal to the whole country, not just half the country or 45% or whatever the MAGA crowd is. In the grander scheme of things, who cares if I lose a part in a movie because I hate the orange atrocity.
Ultimately, I think former head of Amazon Prime, Roy Price, sums it up perfectly. Woke is the new disco, and nowhere is this cultural shift more evident than in the parallel decline of Hollywood and the collapse of Kamala Harris's presidential campaign. Both share a fatal flaw, an insistence on catering to an ideological bubble while alienating vast swaths of the potential audience. For Hollywood, this miscalculation carries existential implications. It's time to move on. We've definitely reached a saturation point, so the question has to be asked, is Hollywood willing to move on from woke Hollywood? Unlikely, but they better, because the audience already has. Now you're going to see a lot of people in the entertainment industry try to metaphorically delete their history and state they were never down with this woke stuff or cancel culture or demonizing half the country, and you're not going to get away with it that easy. Hollywood, you get what you fucking deserve, and it was well earned. Maybe in the distant future there'll be time for grace.
But it is not this day! This day we fight!
Good night, sweet prince.
And let's make one thing abundantly clear. Woke is not dead. Hollywood's willingness to make it continues to this day. Unfortunately for them, the general audience's willingness to put up with it is at zero. And following that disastrous half-decade, woke Hollywood and Hollywood are now in a full identity crisis, leading to a year of complete chaos and slop. And sure, they're still making some good movies and some good TV shows like F1, Weapons, or Mobland, but those are far and few between. Now, Hollywood has always been a bunch of pretentious, self-important, pompous asses, but they also knew that they made entertainment for the working and middle class. You know, the ones that they priced out and pissed off. And if they're going to survive, they need to find a way to reconnect with that average audience member and maybe relearn why they were important to them in the first place. And no, it wasn't as a delivery mechanism for the message. It was as escapism, delivered through cinema and television, which was a cornerstone of American society. They were most influential and inspirational through good storytelling, acting as our collective sanity valve in a world drowning in stress, division, and just bullshit. From the Depression-era Wizard of Oz that made people forget about breadlines, to Star Wars, something that was partially made to be uplifting during the nihilistic and cynical 70s. Ironically enough, a film that preceded it by 2 years, Jaws, the film that essentially invented the summer blockbuster, recently reached number 2 at the box office for a 50th anniversary screening, which should be alarming to all of Hollywood, making Jaws the film that started the blockbuster and maybe the one that ended it. And it also proves that the modern audience doesn't exist. There is only the audience, and they want the same thing that they've always wanted: a good story. Now, Hollywood will always be around in some form or another, but they will never be as prominent as they once were, and it didn't have to be that way, but they decided to play their part in how divisive America is to this very day, and now they're suffering the consequences. Not only are they in competition with themselves thanks to those streaming services giving us access to much better films and TV shows from the past, they're also in direct competition with the audience they alienated. If you like what you heard, please like, share, and subscribe. If you didn't like what you heard, I thank you for listening this long. I will see you in the next video.
Nerdrotic.com. Please subscribe.